Hey everybody, this is Dan.
And this is Ron.
This is a nominee questionable movies, and we have a very special guest on this week. We have Pete Burley of the Saratoga Horror Show, which is another movie podcast. They got a few episodes up. They're great. It's got a video element, and today we're going to talk about the movie Shock Treatment from 1981.
Gentlemen, good to be here. I'm glad I finally made it to the big show, a nominee. It's
Great to have you. Yeah.
It's a big moment for me. I'm a big fan of the show, and I think of a nominee as the Island of Misfit Movies. Is it not?
That sounds about right.
Yeah, and sometimes less misfitty movies show up and kind of join in, and they're like, "Hey, there's no discrimination here or anything." Misfits.
We furnish them with our misfit juice.
I think Shock Treatment is going to fit right in with all the other, like the Willards of the world.
Yes.
Oh, and I want to pay you guys a huge compliment. Your show got me to watch a romantic comedy. I actually watched All About Steve episode. I actually watched it and I liked it. I thought it was great.
Okay, so that's 4 of us now.
Yeah, there's the 3 of us and my sister.
Yeah.
And that's like the entire. I mean, I guess Sandra Bullock probably likes it out of spite, but like I just like it.
I wonder if she truly loves it. I know she went to the Razzies and she gave everybody a copy and all that, took a little bit of sort of a pride in it. I wonder if she secretly loves the movie. I don't know.
Well, when I talked to her, I met her. I met her downtown, and she said to me, "If only there was a podcast that would cover this movie and give it to the world." And I'm just waiting. And if there were brave podcasters who covered it, I would love them forever and give them money.
That's right. I forgot about that. I once met Sandra Bullock, and I told her that she was the best part of Princess Diaries. So I haven't done that one in a long time.
I saw her at a bar once, and she was just like, I think she was pretty drunk, but she was just muttering Rosebud over and over again. So now that we got all the running gags out of the way.
Some for season 1 running gags. Okay, so just a little background on Shock Treatment. You've probably heard of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, but not Shock Treatment. So Shock Treatment is sort of a spiritual sequel. It's not an actual sequel to the Rocky Horror Picture Show. But a bit about the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Originally, it was a stage play. It's a parody of 1950s horror movie. Horror movies, really science fiction movies. There's even the opening song as science fiction double feature. So it was originally a stage play, musical, and it became a movie in 1975, directed by Jim Sharman. The writer, composer, and lyricist is Richard O'Brien. What do I want to say about that? Oh, okay. So, and of course, it became, I don't know if phenomenon is the right word. It's been playing, other than for a short period at the beginning, it's been playing at midnight on Fridays and Saturdays at theaters all over the world. And it has been running since then. It has been in the theaters for, let's see, if that was 75 briefly. So, over 45 years, which is pretty amazing for a movie. And there's what you call shadowcast. So a lot of people will show up, weekend after weekend, and there'll be local groups who will dress up as the characters in the movie and recite the lines or sort of act out and mouth them as in front of the screen. And there'll be people in the audience who are yelling out lines in between that just sort of really funny lines making fun of the movie. It's not the best movie in the world, but it's great and it's campy. And it's really fun to do that as this interactive experience. And they'll throw stuff. At the wedding scene, you throw rice. There's a song, cards for car, cards for pain. So you throw playing cards. They make a toast, so you throw toast, things like that. So it's a lot of fun. And I'll tell you, I've seen it probably at least 24 times since I was 15 and saw it the first time. Shock Treatment came out in 81. And it's not exactly a sequel. It's also a musical. It's also, it's sort of a parody, and we'll get into detail of what it's about. It's got a lot of the same actors, but not necessarily in the same role. So the two leads, two of the leads in the original movie, characters Janet and Brad, which were played by Susan Sarandon and Barry Bostwick, are played by different characters. Jessica Harper and
Cliff DeYoung.
Cliff DeYoung. Yes, Cliff DeYoung.
He's great in this movie. I really believe that he had a gag in his mouth.
So they have the same names. They're the same characters, sort of, but then other characters or other actors, Richard O'Brien, then Patricia Quinn, who played Columbia in the original. I'm sorry, Magenta. Little Nell, who played Columbia. A few people who played very small roles now have somewhat bigger roles. There's the guy that played the criminologist in the first movie, is a judge in this movie. So a lot of the same people, not necessarily the same roles. And instead of Susan Sarandon, we get Jessica Harper. But the storylines are totally different. Oh, and it does take place in the town of Denton, which is where the original movie starts. Denton, the home of happiness. So Pete.
My initial idea, like coming in, was to talk about Rocky Horror Show as little as possible in order to get to shock treatment. But I realized like that is kind of a foolish quest, because I don't see any other avenues of accessibility to this film that don't go through Rocky Horror. I just don't see how, like, because this movie is hard to find. Like, you can't, it's not on streaming. As far as I could tell, you either had to buy the DVD off of Amazon or watch it on YouTube. There's a cut on YouTube. This is not an easy movie to find. You kind of have to be looking for it in order to find it. So I don't think there's any way to talk about this movie in isolation from the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah, I didn't even know it existed until you mentioned it the other week.
Right. And in Rocky Horror Show Picture Show I don't think it's debatable. It's the queen of cult movies. It's the ultimate cult classic. I can't think of another rival to Rocky Horror Show. And Rocky Horror Show is, while it's still kind of a cult classic, it's pretty iconic. It's pretty well known. It has gone out to the masses, to the point where if like Fox did a remake a few years ago to air on television, and that's almost like, oh, it's mainstream now. It's definitely mainstream. But because Rocky Horror Picture Show gets so much attention and shock treatment gets none, it's been kind of my goal to tell as many people about this film, although knowing full well that this movie will not necessarily appeal to someone who is a fan of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's a different animal. I mean, it has the only commonality I can really think of that matters is that it's a musical. Yeah, there's some of the same characters, but it's clearly
the style of the music. Like, if you like the music, if you're humming along to the Rocky Horror Picture Show, you're going to find at least a few tunes you like in this movie.
Only a few.
Yeah. It's a totally different experience. I've heard of attempts to do shadowcasts to shock treatment, and it just doesn't seem to catch on in the same way. And I get it. I completely understand why. This is a different kind of movie. It's got a whole different kind of message and a vibe to it. And I'm a huge fan of this movie, but I'll be the first one to say it has, it's got some serious flaws, and to have it play for somebody cold, I can't see this movie working for the vast majority of the population. So if I recommend it to somebody, I give it a recommendation in a lot of context.
I've got a historical context question that maybe you guys can answer. So in like the last 20 years or so, it's become a lot more common for like premieres of sci-fi movies, of superhero movies, for people to show up at the openings dressed as characters from the films. Mm-hmm. Was Rocky Horror the first movie that people were like specifically getting dressed up for? Because I can't think of an earlier. I mean, like, I don't have a lot of photo evidence of like if kids were going to Creature from the Black Lagoon dressed as the creature or something, but I can't think of an earlier example.
That is a great question. I cannot think of an earlier example either. That perhaps the birth of, I think the kids call it cosplay.
Yeah, it is kind of cosplay.
It's right. Cosplay.
Yeah, and it's
cosplay.
It's not a giant convention. It's small, although if you add all the people all over the world, it's massive, like a massive distributed convention, people dressing up all the time. Wow, that's a good point.
Diaspora.
But I don't think when the movie first came out, I don't think people went there dressed. It was only playing in the mid-90s.
No. So if you want to know like what the fate of the Rocky Horror Picture Show would have been had it not been for a small group of people in Greenwich Village, its fate would have been the same as The Phantom of the Paradise. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that film. The Phantom of the Paradise and the Rocky Horror Picture Show in their initial run played as like Friday night double features. And if it hadn't been for that group of people in Greenwich Village, Rocky Horror Picture Show would be relegated to the same place that the Phantom of the Paradise is. And that, you know, I love that movie too. But that's kind of the level of obscurity. It was the
Paradise. Was that Ken Russell or was that?
I can't remember who the director was. Paul Williams, I believe, is the musician who plays the devilish character, and it features the actress from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Jessica Harper was in both Shock Treatment and the Phantom of the Paradise.
Right, but not Rocky Horror Picture Show.
She was not in the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah.
So yeah, Jessica Harper from Shock Treatment is in the Phantom. She knew how to pick them. She picked the obscure ones.
Well, she was in Lost in America with Albert Brooks, and she was on the last season of It's Gary Shandling Show. That's mostly where I knew her from. But
and Suspiria, she was in Suspiria.
Suspiria. She is in some what I think are some damn fine movies that aren't as well known as they should be.
Yeah, and 3 of these being cult classics.
Absolutely, yeah.
So do you want to tell us a bit about what Shock Treatment is?
Yeah, I'll give you the rundown as best I can. It's a little bit hard to summarize what this movie is, but the basic idea is there is a small town in the Midwest, Denton, the home of happiness, and a fast food bigwig has bought a TV station, and inside this TV station, he does I think what you would call reality TV. Where he takes real people and exploits their personal lives and problems for television. And inside this studio, this whole movie, the entirety of the film takes place inside this studio of Farley Flavors, the fast food bigwig who owns the studio. And as the story progresses, he gets a shine for Janet. And he is hatching a plot to separate Janet from Brad and take Janet as his bride and live as his queen in this studio, this reality television studio. And the judge, who was the criminologist in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and his co-host of the news show that is canceled, I believe it's the Denton Dossier. Well, the Denton Dossier gets canceled, and they decide to do some investigation, and they unravel Farley Flavor's plot. And Janet rescues herself, in a sense, from his deceptions, reunites with Brad in happiness, and they drive, the 4 of them, the Brad, Janet, the criminologist, or the judge, and his co-host, drive off away from the nasty studio into the real world to rock and roll.
Right. And Brad and Janet first show up in the audience, and they're brought onto the show, onto the stage, and they're separated. Brad's sin is that he's a bit of a doofus and kind of boring. So they have to perform shock treatment. They don't actually do ECT, so there's not technically shock treatment in it, but he's locked up in a padded cell, in a chair, drugged, gagged, and handled by these 2
quacks. They're quacks. Yeah. They are frauds, and they got a TV show, and they exploit the personal psychological issues of the audience for ratings, and then but it turns out they were frauds all along. Which I would say, and this is going to be a recurring thing for me throughout the show. You're going to get sick of me hearing me say this. This movie was made in 1981. This film was made in 1981, long before there were ever Dr. Phil's and Dr. Oz's on TV. And maybe I'm giving the film too much credit, because I don't know how much is intentional and how much is like accidental Simpsons, for prescience of the future. But this was made in 1981, and it depicts a show where supposed medical professionals bring on people and exploit their mental health issues for ratings. And I the first time I saw this movie, I was like, when was this made?
I mean, that's why Ron keeps me on the show.
1981. right. Ron's doing the same thing to Dan. He's like, this is my meal ticket. This guy's idiosyncrasies and mental deficiencies are my meal ticket.
They don't have a thing about Mexican Santa Claus in the DSM-6. I got my fingers crossed for the 7th.
Now, I realize you guys do this show virtually most of the time, but you always form, like in a podcast, you form images of the studio they're in. And I always had this idea like you were recording in the back room of a VHS store. You had that guy who still runs a VHS store, right?
Yeah.
And
he's got DVDs mostly.
DVDs. Oh, okay. A video store.
Yeah, he has some weird, like when I used to go over there, if he found some weird VHS stuff, he'd let me borrow it. And I saw some, he had this great bootleg of a bunch of TV appearances by Serge Gainsbourg from like French TV. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's the last dinosaur, or the second or third to last dinosaur.
So I always imagined like that's where you guys record the podcast, in some kind of back room. And then when the show is over, you open up a cabinet and put Dan in, like a Dr. Caligari. Or is that how you say it? Dr. Caligari, the cabinet of Dr. Caligari, the silent horror film.
I am not sure, because they never pronounce it in the film.
For obvious reasons, they never pronounce it in the film.
I like to see Dr. Smith in the closet.
Just Dr. Smith. If the remake of Dr. Caligari would be just called Dr. Smith, because they'd be like, audiences won't know how to pronounce that.
Yeah. Smith is so much more relatable.
It was Kevin Copes was the guy on the
of the Video Underground, and JP, he's still serving mac and cheese and renting out DVDs. So if you're out in Boston, go check him out.
Video Underground. Although, I caught last night a bit of, I think it's called The Last Blockbuster.
Oh, yeah.
Blockbuster, and it's the last blockbuster in Bend, Oregon, the last remaining one. So it was interesting, the whole talking about the experience of going to the video store, renting the VCR itself, things like that.
Like shock treatment, when I was watching, I was thinking like, this is totally something that was probably in that, like, do you remember the drive-in movie store that well? That like
absolutely. I would get the 5 for 5 all the time there. As long as it wasn't a new release, you could get 5 movies for $5.
Oh, nice.
It just seems like the kind of thing they would have had in that room in the cult section room, where they had like a wall of like God, I remember taking Ben out of there. Do you
remember the TV ads for the drive-in movie store?
A little bit, yeah.
Amazing. I have yet to see like ads like that for any local business, and the way they did the one, like they would get into costume and stuff, and like they would dress up as the Wizard of Oz. And this is just a mom and pop video store. I think they had maybe 2 branches, and they did. But my favorite one is they did one where they have a woman in silhouette. And she's walking through, and she opens the door of the adult film section, and she kind of makes this shh. Nobody, the audience can't see me do that, but she's like shh, and she goes in, and I was like, I just found that so great. It's like, hey, yeah, we have a porn section. Come on in. I mean, that's why you're coming here. Let's not hide it. If you're coming for pornography, we have it, and we'd like you. We'll show you the door. We're not ashamed of our porn section. In fact, we're going to make an ad featuring our porn section. So I found that just to be refreshing at the time. This was, in the late 90s, early 2000s.
It was a mom and pop porn shop.
Well, I mean, obviously they were, a full movie store too.
Oh yeah, no, they had a collection of stuff. They had a lot of weird, like, that was the only place I remember ever seeing a copy of Salo when I was like a teenager.
Right. That's movies you can't get at Blockbuster that you could get at the drive-in movie store.
Blockbuster.
But yeah, I appreciated they
There
were.
was a big Hollywood video that was over by the Price Chopper, I think.
I think I went to that once,
Mm.
and I can't remember why. I think it was just my geography at the time that it was closer. But normally I'd just go to the drive-in movie store.
Yeah.
So actually, I saw Shock Treatment before, and I remembered not thinking very well of it, and I enjoyed it more this time. You know, whether it's a good movie or not, that's another matter.
Crap! I'm sorry. The phone rang. I didn't turn off that phone. It's gonna ring for a second. I've ruined the show, and now I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed. I should know. I'm the first person who should know to turn off. I got burnt on Neon Genesis Evangelion. And I've made my opinions clear to Dan off air. I did not enjoy that episode because I've heard of that show and I wanted to know more about it to see if I should watch it. Because, you know, I use your show to get recommendations about movies like All About Steve. And I know less.
Avon, I like the way you pronounce it more.
Neon Genesis Evangelion.
I think
How do you say
Evangelion is the
Evangelion? Oh, okay.
Evangelion, but I kind of like Evangelion.
Evangelion, that's a different show. That's like a televangelist show.
Yeah, but yeah, it's great, but it's no All About Steve.
Well, no, but what I will say is this is where I will hold you both to account. I learned less. I felt I learned less about that show. I know less about that show after listening to you guys for like 2 hours.
Although that was me and Alex's fault. Ron.
Ron wasn't there. Oh, Ron. Geez, now I apologize. Ron, you were falsely accused.
It's not my fault, I swear.
If anybody wants to like learn exactly how much Ron contributes to the show, listen to the Sidecar episodes and you can tell the difference.
You can hear the difference. So now it all makes sense. Ron wasn't involved in that episode, and that's why it was a stinker.
Yeah, but we finished episode 2. I think we got a little more focus for episode 2 that's coming out. I'm saying this week, but you know, by the time this goes live, that'll be live. But
Ron is the Paul Simon to your Art Garfunkel.
Is that a remark about my hair?
Well, I know the audience can't see it, but the hair matches as well. The hair, there is some Garfunkel hair going on.
Wait, so you said I'm the Paul Simon and Dan's the Art Garfunkel?
Yes, exactly. You're the one who can play the guitar and sing and have a solo career. And without you, Dan becomes the Art Garfunkel who ends up in some kind of relatively obscure movies. and
without
doesn't
Ron
have the big
here, I would have
career.
said like this was a movie. This was like a fun movie musical called Electroconvulsive Therapy. Nobody would have corrected it.
If anybody wants to see evidence for how Dan operates alone in the wild without Ron's influence, look no further than the ghost story episode of the Saratoga Horror Show, which I graciously invited Dan on to watch a film I cared about. And then halfway through the episode, he is banned and deplatformed. And I brought in another guest halfway through. It was rough. I was hoping to get a kayfabe feud going with your show, so you can. Yeah, that's a good way to drive up ratings. If you want to drive up ratings for a show, you start a feud, and then
Right.
people will stop for a car accident and look at.
That's what paid for my college.
Right. This is a huge digression, and I fully understand if you have to be heavy on the
What we're
editing.
here for.
Yeah, if you have to be heavy on the editing button, I will fully understand that for releasing this episode. But have you ever heard of a genre of music called chap hop?
No.
No.
So it's
like they got dry lips.
it's no. It's British Victorian. It's British Victorian rap. So these guys, one guy does more of a steampunk flair. He's called Professor Elemental. And then there's Mr. B, the gentleman rhymer. And so, he one of the songs is Straight Out of Surrey. I come straight out of Surrey, banging my rhymes. It's wonderful. It's amazing. And Professor Elemental and Mr. B, the gentleman rhymer. You cannot imagine a more niche genre of music than chap hop. So these two guys, they're like, we are so niche, but we're in hip hop. So they started a feud, and it was beautiful. It was like So like, well, we have to have a feud if we're in hip hop. And they started this amazing feud between these two chap hop. And so I think that would be the equivalent with a feud between the Saratoga Horror Show and a nominee. The two littlest niche, tiny markets, but they hate each other.
Oh man, yeah. I kind of want to record like a chap hop record now called like I Killed Edwin Drood and Your Next Motherfucker.
Oh, that sounds right up. That would be a great chap hop song. Sir, he's biting me, Jeffrey. I've got to respond. Okay. So shock treatment.
Yeah, I know you're worried about a digression. So speaking of shock treatment.
Speaking of shock treatment, to bring it back to shock treatment. So I can't remember exactly where we left off on shock treatment, but one of the biggest things I wanted to talk about with this film is this film was made in 1981, and I saw it before the Trump administration, and then just recently rewatched it. And my feelings about this film are very different now after the end of the Trump administration, because again, there's no way Richard O'Brien could have predicted, any of these things or some of the coincidences that happen in the movie that are so remarkable. Again, it's like The Simpsons getting it right, accidentally. But I just really feel like this movie, more than probably any other movie I've seen, encapsulates the Trump administration and nails the vibe. And it's eerie how it's satire, but I think it nailed it down to MAGA hats, the Farley Flavors hats that he gives out. And the reality television star taking the world, reality television sensibilities taking over a whole town. And
that's probably only the second satire of reality television that was ever made.
Right. I mean, as far as I can tell,
by Albert Brooks, and then there's because An American Family had only aired on PBS like 3 years before then.
Yeah, and I feel like this movie can be viewed now as not just like a musical, cult classic, but in the same way. And I know this sounds like I'm making too much of shock treatment, but in the same way as Network, as far as predictive of American consumer culture and media consumption. I personally put it up there the same way, the same chills I got from watching Network, I get from this movie and seeing how accurately it seemed to predict what our diet of media would become.
Well, and I think in relation to Network, a thing that this movie gets right that I don't even know if Network really touches on this, but you have this extravagant spectacle pretending that it's the center of normality.
Mm-hmm.
It's the ultimate normative town, but it's really like a bunch of bloodthirsty hillbillies sitting in a TV studio 24/7.
I mean, the idea of this town that is completely enclosed in a studio, and I believe that was accidental. In my research into the film, I don't think the idea was that they were going to, I think it was budgetary reasons they had to shoot everything inside a studio. But man, what a perfect metaphor for a media social bubble. Like, these people don't go anywhere. There is no shot. There is not a single shot of the outside world in this film. And if that isn't a perfect metaphor for a social media bubble, I don't know what is. Except if you actually just had a bubble.
Because there's the game show and then there's the kind of reality show thing. Although I think they're part of the same program.
Yes.
But the game show part seemed like to me it was just like a really a more brutal version of the Newlywed Game.
Yeah. Yes.
But then the other thing I wanted to talk about was the set. The set was the thing that really stood out to me in this movie, and they have that great shot where they pull away, and it's this thing that's equal parts padded cell, maze, and game show set. And when they pull away and they show that it's all one continuous room, basically at the end, it kind of reminded me of that Jerry Lewis movie where he built the half a house, the Ladies' Man.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that.
It's that's just me and Jerry, I guess. But
and is a big Jerry Lewis fan. So.
Ron, were you getting similar vibes watching it this time?
Oh yes, and I saw it with a friend of mine, Matt, who's been a guest on the show a few times. He's also, between us, we've probably seen it 50 times, and he used to show it occasionally at a cinema. So it was actually part of it was watching it with him that helped extract some of that and realize some of the vibes. Oh, but totally, especially the reality show. Their reality show aspect of it, and I think you used the word prescient. Is it prescient? What's
I don't know. I took a gamble and hoped it was the right one.
Okay.
Prescient?
I always say prescient.
Prescience.
With it like an S or a sh?
But I also pronounce it chipotle.
So I'll say prescient, and somebody can say prescience, and we'll split. One of us we'll get it right at least in some 50% of the time.
Well, the word I wanted to use was that it was Presage, and in this movie, presages or presages.
Oh, that's another one. Don't know how to pronounce it properly.
Dan, how do you pronounce it?
Presages?
Presagi.
Oh man, that's not helping.
Reality shows.
That's not helping.
Yeah, but I haven't thought about the Trump stuff, but definitely the cult of personality. Actually, they came up with. There's so many themes in it. Let's see. It deals with fascism. I don't know if you noticed at the beginning, there's the 3 Fs.
To me, it's glaring. That's almost like through a megaphone. That was almost a little too much, you know? But yeah, clearly that is Farley Flavor's little symbol is a fascist symbol.
Yeah, totally.
And Richard, with both of Richard O'Brien's movies, because we only have 2 to go off of. And that breaks my heart because this guy is just on my wavelength, because I got the Rocky Horror Picture Show the very first time I saw it. I was like, oh, wait a second. I had no idea. This is what this movie's all about. And loved it ever since. And then this one, same thing. First time I saw it, I was like, this guy is just on my wavelength, and it breaks my heart. He never made another film. Did
he ever do any other stage work?
I don't believe so. And I've watched a bunch of interviews with him, and he's I really enjoy his interviews. And the problem is that every interview he gets asked to do is basically about the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And he's extraordinarily gracious about it. Like I assume that if he was like a rock star, he would be the guy who would play his one hit as many times as the audience wants to hear it. And he wouldn't gripe about only being known for the Rocky Horror Picture Show. He seems genuinely grateful that he is known for the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and he's grateful for the phenomena it is. But I just watching interviews with him, I started to be like, hey, can you ask him about anything other than the Rocky Horror Picture Show for my edification? I wanted to know more about the guy. So
is he still alive?
He's still alive. He lives in New Zealand now. He moved back to his native New Zealand after living in Britain.
You should
for
see if you can get him on the horror show.
I think that would be a real tough get. And the other thing too is I'm not sure he's that into horror per se. I mean, clearly he has a love of the B movies and the horror. He was in.
But you get him on and you ask him about, because like
the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
No. If you contacted him and it's like, I want to talk to you about Shock Treatment, he'd probably be like, thank God somebody's not asking me about Rocky Horror.
He might. He has mixed feelings about this movie. It's not the movie he wanted to make. And that's why I'm going to give him, and I know, like, as far as I know, I don't know enough to know, like, how much collaborators helped or influenced, but I do know from watching the Rocky Horror Picture Show and Shock Treatment, he's the driving creative force behind both of these films. He writes the music and he writes the script. So, I mean, I may be giving him credit for things that were the ideas of collaborators or whatnot, but that is just, in that I just wasn't able to pin down everything.
I was surprised when I was looking up Sherman, and like most of his other movies seem to be these like low-key realist dramas from what I can tell, except for the O'Brien movies. And the whole time I was watching it, I was kind of thinking like a Ken Russell O'Brien movie would be like O'Brien does the book and the music, and then Ken Russell does the visuals. That would be like the perfect cult film.
Yeah,
I could see that. I mean, Listomania is like halfway there.
Mania is as close as we got. Yeah,
I have to watch Listomania now. I have not seen it.
It's
you would love it.
But it's as far as I know, and this is just me speculating, I think After Shock Treatment was such a dud, and that it didn't even take on any cult status, and Rocky Horror fans didn't really seem to respond to it. I think he got out of the game. I think he was like, I'm sure he had to. There was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that went into both the making of Rocky Horror Picture Show and Shock Treatment, and he probably was exhausted. And then to see it not get any reception, he was like, okay, this, songwriter, movie maker thing isn't for me. And I mean, he went on to keep acting. He has a couple of great parts in Flash Gordon, 1980. He's in that. My favorite one is he's in Dark City.
Yeah.
Love that.
Watching Dark City, I'm like, is that Richard O'Brien? No, there's no.
That can't be.
Richard O'Brien.
Is that Riff Raff?
So excited.
Yeah.
I hope enjoy the movie. I hope I'm not, raining on anyone's parade here or anything like that. I didn't enjoy the movie that much, but I was so geeked out over the fact that Richard O'Brien was in it.
No, like Dark City is, it's a movie I love, but I understand like it has its flaws. And I mean, one of the major flaws is it gives away the twist at the very beginning of the movie.
Oh, okay. Kind of like this podcast.
Kind of like this podcast. Dark City, I just didn't understand, like light bulbs are pretty cheap, so like it was.
I see what you did there.
Disbelief.
I'm lost. It's over my head.
Well, like the whole thing is just like they should have called it City Without Light Bulbs.
Yeah, all they had to do was go down to Walmart, buy a pack of light bulbs. Boom. It's not dark anymore.
Instead, everybody's just wandering around, and it's like, I can't see where I'm going, and it's like that's your fault, buddy.
I think you're diminishing the struggle of the citizens of Dark City, sir.
I've not seen that movie in probably 20 years.
So
I remember like the wall moving thing, but the rest of it I can't remember.
I really dig that movie. I dig it a lot. I understand it's not a perfect movie or anything, but I dig that.
Oh yeah, I need to watch it again. I think I probably saw it before I was able to appreciate what was going on.
Oh, Kiefer Sutherland,
like it's a cool looking thing, and like the walls are moving around.
I'm like Kiefer Sutherland is great and creepy in that movie. He's his name's escaping me. He was in Peter Lorre. He very much reminded me that he was kind of doing like a Peter Lorre sort of thing.
Oh, that's neat. I saw it in the theaters when it came out. Somebody, I went with somebody else who was really into it, and I'm like, again, the most exciting part for me was Richard O'Brien. But I wonder if I watch it again now, if I'll have a better appreciation, if I'll enjoy it more. It's not that I hated it; it was just like, not for me.
Yeah. But it was strange because that movie kind of came and went. But it predates The Matrix, and Roger Ebert that was his favorite film of that year.
Dark City?
Dark City was his favorite film of that year, which probably made me. I used to love Ebert back in the day. My brother and I, for Christmas every year, would give each other copies of his huge yearly book, and so I took Ebert's opinion on things seriously. I mean, he'd get me to watch movies I would have never watched otherwise. That doesn't mean I don't disagree with him on a number of things, but
that's kind of, I mean, from what Dan's told me before, that's kind of his relationship with Roger Ebert. He'd get the book every year.
Yeah.
Multiple copies.
Oh no, I wouldn't get the book every year. No, I still have one of those. So I have a copy of the Leonard Maltin movie guide. I wanted to get a Video Hound movie retriever, but I found the Leonard Maltin one first, and I've been slowly writing in the margins porn parody titles for every movie in the book.
Dan, let me get this straight. Let me get this straight. You got the Leonard Maltin book every year and not the Ebert book?
No. I didn't get. So my dad used to go around to garage.
Dude, nerds are Leonard Maltin fans. The cool kids are Ebert fans.
I had like the Video Hound movie retriever, and then I had like some knockoff Ebert book that looked like it was printed on
Video Hound. Hello, Basic. Hello, Basic. What is Basic as a
programming language
or pejorative?
Oh yeah, Basic. It's short for basic bitch.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay, maybe I shouldn't have used. All right, edit me out
Uh,
saying basic. I might have.
I
I
can
might.
be a basic bitch.
Okay.
Well, you know,
I,
so when Matt was on the show the first time, he taught us his party trick slash superpower. He can predict, or he can tell you what Leonard Maltin gave a movie within half a star. Was it a whole star or
really?
half a star? Half a star, I think.
I think half a star, yeah.
And
From memory or just intuition?
intuition.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I tried to stump him, and he got it. And I was like, "There's no way." And we looked it up, and like, "Yep, that's what Leonard Maltin gave it."
Well, I think that proves my point because Ebert's not predictable. He contains multitudes. You never know.
Well,
Although-
You never
I
know.
think a lot of it is more like Malden. I get the sense he didn't actually watch most of the movies, and Ebert, it's sort of what side of the bed did he wake up on?
Yes,
a lot of
there
the
is. There's
time.
definitely that. It's like, and there were a few
He was
times
like
he was
pretty
like,
upfront about that too.
he was upfront about that. He said he had to watch Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven again and change his review because he was like, I watched that movie the night before I got married. I wasn't in the best, the best place to review it. So yeah, he's upfront about that. And he's also upfront about that it's all subjective. He's like, yeah, this star stuff, I should probably just get rid of the stars. And these are my opinions. How else can I approach a movie? But whether my personal experience.
Chop
So
off
I,
his
he never had pretense to like his view was objectively correct.
Hmm. And I think that was because he wasn't coming from like an academic film background. He was like a journalist first.
He's a newspaper man.
up
He's
on
a
the movie
newspaper
beat.
man to the bone. Yeah, he's a newspaper man. He fell in love with newspapers and journalism and that that era. I wish. Well, I mean, I think he would be. I think he would be pretty bummed out about where the fate of newspapers. And I'm not saying technology changes. There's nothing you can do about it. Technology changes, but I've heard this from a lot of like that old newspaper sensibility is gone now.
Yeah, I would. I mean, like I haven't actually worked in any capacity in journalism in a long time, but it didn't. Like when I was in journalism school, most of what they were teaching us about was how to sell internet advertising because they were afraid we were all going to starve to death with our degrees.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Like with Ebert, the thing that I love is that he got the last laugh because he was skinny and the Brown Bunny was still a bad movie.
Oh yeah. 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 This is the thing too, is like, he was as harsh as you can be in a critical sense to Rob Schneider, where Rob Schneider said to some reviewer, like, yeah, well, you know what? Your opinion doesn't matter because you don't have a Pulitzer. You don't have a Pulitzer or anything. And Ebert jumps in and goes, well, Mr. Snyder, I do have a Pulitzer and your movie sucks. When Ebert got sick, Schneider sent him flowers and Ebert wrote about it. And it's like, I was as harsh as I could be to this guy, and I still don't like his movie, but I appreciate his, and I believe he handled Vincent Gallo in the same way, that when Vincent Gallo recut Brown Bunny, he watched it and reviewed it,
Oh, okay. I'm guessing he still didn't like it.
I think he gave it a positive. It was a positive review. So for him, that threshold is between 2 stars and 3 stars. But I almost felt like he was, I don't know. I don't want to.
He didn't want to continue beef with Vincent.
He was being gregarious. Like he had made critiques, and this auteur recalibrated his movie, and I think he wanted to give the guy credit for actually taking another stab and trying to improve his craft.
Okay.
Trying to watch the Brown Bunny may have been one of my first examples of becoming aware of what I'm calling movie masochism, where like, why am I doing this to myself? Why am I doing this to myself?
Tulane Blacktop with a blowjob at the end of it.
Ugh,
Not
God.
a good version of Tulane Blacktop.
Brown Bunny. My other awareness of my own movie masochism, where now after at 43, I just won't put myself through stuff anymore, was when I was working at a Blockbuster Video in Tucson, Arizona. You got 5 free rentals a week, and I made it my goal to, not new release rentals, mind you, 5 free off the genre sections. I made it my goal to watch the entire horror movie section at 5 movies a week, alphabetical order. around Amityville 3D, I started really regretting that goal, and I never made it past the bees. And that's the moment I was like, okay, I don't have to watch every movie. I can be selective. I don't have to punish myself. It's okay to turn off a movie if you're not liking it.
Was the punishment that some of them just weren't very good and you weren't enjoying them, or
Oh yeah. So it was like there are like an Amityville, like trying to get through the Amityvilles was first one like, oh, that's an interesting movie. But once you get to like Amityville 3D, it like has nothing to do with the original. Somebody bought the title. And the whole point of that, there's an entire category of movies where they make all their money just by putting a name on the box and kind of duping people into getting it.
Well, that's how Troll 2 happened.
Exactly. That's the same story as Troll 2. Yeah. And there's a lot of horror movies like that. And obviously, like horror movies that's a genre I love. I love talking about horror movies. I will be the first to admit the vast majority of horror movies suck. Stephen King in his book Dance Macabre, that was the one he wrote in the 80s about the horror genre. He wrote being a horror fan is like sifting for gold. It's really, you're sifting for gold. You got to go through a lot of mud to find those gems. But I still believe it's worth it. I still
Did you ever see that one that King directed where it's like the tractor goes?
Absolutely, Maximum Overdrive. And
I wanted to see that because it looked like my kind of bad movie.
You can skip it. Even in a so bad it's good idea, it's still not an enjoyable movie. Stephen King doesn't like to talk about it. He's like, I was so high on cocaine throughout that. I remember very little of directing that movie, and I never directed a movie again. I learned my lesson. You don't have to watch Maximum Overdrive as an exercise of the era. I can't stop you, Dan. I can't stop you, but I can't say you don't. You could watch YouTube clips and get all the sense.
When I watch it, it's not going to be Pete's fault.
It won't. I take no responsibility for you watching that. I'm not gonna do it on the horror show. Or I wouldn't pick it on the horror show. If somebody else picks it, I've got to do it. But everybody, Stephen King has given his blessing that we don't have to watch it.
Although, Dan, as an Emilio Estevez completionist, you probably ought to see it.
You would have to see it to complete the Emilio Estevez.
How did you know I was an Emilio Estevez completionist?
I think everyone, that's the first thing I learned about you.
We could smell it. We could sell it. It might be, well, the audience can't see this, but Dan has like this shrine to the Mighty Ducks in the corner of his. It's next to the John Cassavetes shrine. The Cassavetes shrine is much bigger, and it's and it actually, I believe, is that his skull you have there?
No comment.
No comment.
But
too close to home for general audience consumption.
I wanted to make like either a sequel to Breakfast Club called Lunch Club, and it's just like they have detention at a different time of day, but it's basically the same movie.
It's a sequel, like, yeah. It's the Lunch Club,
Breakfast Club, and Fight Club,
then Supper Club.
And Supper Club, yeah. My Dinner with Emilio,
and then the final one will be Midnight Snack.
Fourth Meal Club, and it's just a long Taco Bell commercial.
Speaking of midnight snacks,
shock treatment.
Oh, so I was going to say something. Okay. So this is just comparing it to Rocky Horror, and part of the reason that I think that it doesn't succeed that much, and I have to say again, since I watched it with Matt and we talked about it, there's a blur here between what he thought and what I thought, and then what we sort of agreed on and all that. But I know that I at least agreed with this. Is with Rocky Horror, it was really simple. It was about hedonism, be yourself, boom, that's it.
Let your freak flag fly, right?
Yes, and that's what's so alluring about it. Oh, I can tell you, the first time I saw it, you said, the way you connected with it. I was 15, queer, in the closet, and I'm seeing this. I'm like, oh my god, it's real. The way. Well, I don't know if I felt exactly the way things go on in the Rocky Horror Show, but still, this
right.
It has a very queer sensibility. And I'm like, oh my god, this is great, and that's part of what drove me to keep watching it. Whereas this movie has. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt, but right from I watched Rocky Horror for the first time on VH1 in my 20s,
Mhm.
and right from that first song, like, and Flash Gordon was there in Silver Underwear. That first song, I was like, I found that song to be so beautiful and poignant,
Yeah.
and that here is, you know, that song is sung from a person in their teenage years, questioning their, you know, not sure about their sexuality, but knowing like, then the only place they can get these and I believe there was a film, and I haven't seen it, called The Celluloid Closet, where it was about the subtle queer culture in movies before that was allowed. And that opening song to me is about somebody who, hey, wait a second, why am I so comfortable, or why am I really enjoying these Friday movie, you know, double features, and why do I have to go to the creature features? Are the creature features the only place where you can get these? And this is one of the reasons I love horror movies, because horror movies can get away with things that other genres can't, and tackle issues that other genres, you know, other genres can't, because a lot of the audience can just watch the movie and be like, oh, they're fighting a monster, but
You have that kind of like the veil of disposability that you can work under.
yes, yeah, the veil of disposability, and that it can cover as a monster movie, but wait a second, no, what we were actually talking about is racism here. You know, that monster is racism. That's what these people were fighting in this movie. But you know, but you can make it and sci-fi does this too very well. And you can make it palatable to somebody. Somebody might accidentally go in thinking they were going to just watch a monster movie, and then in theory might actually contemplate how they feel about other cultures and peoples. But anyway, I'm sorry to make that a huge digression, because
No.
Rocky Horror was the first ever R-rated movie I saw when I was 10, because my dad has a poor memory. He drove over, I think, the drive-in movie store, and he's like, I remember this being fun in college. You kids should watch this.
right.
And that's the way I saw, like, I saw Clockwork Orange when I was 12 that way.
Man, yeah.
And, you know, I didn't get most of it, so it was just sort of like, this movie's kind of boring, and this guy really likes dairy. That was my takeaway. But like
Wait, your takeaway from Clockwork Orange or Rocky Horror?
Clockwork Orange when I was 12 was just like, wow, this is like,
And
this
he
is
really likes dairy?
lowest got milk
Local
commercial.
Club.
Oh, the Moloko Milk Bar, of course. I'm sorry. Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Moloko Milk Bar. Yeah.
Like, you know, all the magazines that I was reading at the time, because, you know, I was 12.
Got milk.
They always had those got milk commercials, and I was just like, this guy, like, whatever happened to this guy, milk wasn't enough. You know, but when I was watching Rocky Horror, is like the most basic bitch, like straight dude you can imagine a 10-year-old being. I was really happy they threw me a bone with Susan Sarandon, but the rest of it I could not make heads or tails of, because I was 10. But
Yeah,
I do remember thinking Susan Sarandon was like gorgeous.
Oh, I think she is I don't know. For me, she is perpetually gorgeous.
Yeah.
To this day, I find her. I would if
The 10 when I was 10.
if somehow I could date Susan Sarandon, I would do it in a heartbeat.
The first movie I saw in which Susan Sarandon was Bull Durham.
Oh, yeah.
Not realizing that I actually had seen her in a movie many times, that it was the same person. Because I knew the name Susan. Sorry, yeah, I knew the name Susan Sarandon from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I didn't know who was in Bull Durham. I wasn't paying attention, so I didn't know that they were the same.
So, but what I really did want to hear was how you found the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and your feeling about like watching it for the first time.
So when I was in middle school, the big mall that was about a 20-minute drive, had a multiplex in it. And, you know, so occasionally we'd go see movies there. And I always remember seeing this poster with these giant lips on it, which, by the way, those of you at home, you can't see this, but Pete has them as his background right now, the lips from the beginning
It
of
looks
Rocky.
like they're gonna eat him.
Yeah.
But so I knew nothing about this movie, but it was always there, and I'd heard it, and then I'd heard a tiny little bit, and I had this really weird conception of like a group of kids goes to some castle, and there's a giant
a giant mouth that they meet, and I realized a little later that I was combining it with the example dungeon in Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
So I knew nothing about it, and then when I was about 15, a friend of mine who was sort of my friend, my idol.
I think I know the sample dungeon you're talking about. I believe I do. Yeah, I think I used it. I traced it to do to be the DM of my first adventure back when I was like 13, I think.
Oh, okay.
I traced that. I tried to run it.
The mouth, there's a riddle, and it's something like he says some letters, and you have to complete it, and the letters are the first letter of each number. It's like
might be a different dungeon. After the show, I'll grab. I think I have it in the garage here and see.
Oh, okay, cool.
The same console. Anyway, but I interrupted your story yet again.
No, that's fine. So I don't remember how it came up, but I had my friend, my idol. I was a sophomore, he was a senior. I'm like, wow, I can't believe this. There were a few that kind of adopted me a little bit. I was a loner. I barely had any friends. The people that were sort of my peers in that, they were really kind of nasty.
Well, you hadn't gone through your big growth spurt yet.
I hadn't. Yeah, I once got I was walking in the hallway as a freshman near the lockers, and somebody much taller than me walked up, and he kind of like shoved me, and he said, wow, that kid must have been only 4 feet tall. And I turned around and said, I'm 5'1", damn it. So,
and you're like 5'3" now, right?
At least. Maybe I'm 5'3.5", Dan. I'm between 5'7" and 5'8". I was holding on to that close to 5'8" for a long time, but I'm just above 5'7". I've shrunk. But I don't remember how he had mentioned it a number of times, and and I recognized that from that poster. So I still had no idea what I was going into, other than he didn't. I don't think he told me many details. But we prepared the toast, we prepared the rice, we prepared the toilet paper, and all that stuff. And I was like, whoa, what are we going into? This looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. And then the movie starts. And it's a little kind of normal, actually, from normal in the sense of normies, right?
Right.
And so everything just kind of like, and then it becomes a little weird. And then suddenly you get the guy with the eyeliner and the fishnet stockings and the leather underwear. I'm like, oh my god, and I'm feeling a little turned on.
Right.
I'd never seen anything gay or queer, certainly not like that. And I was like, I felt almost, I'm going to say transported. I felt almost transported. And it was the closest at that point that I'd come to being out. The wanting to go to see it again and again. I remember even as we were driving home, I just kept repeating, when are we going to go see it again? When are we going to see it again? And finally, my friend, I was in the back seat. We went with another friend, and he turns around and said, "Will you shut up?" Like yelled at me, because I mean, I was a pain. I was a little shit, like saying that over and over again. But I could not. I was already before it was over. I was ready to see it again.
Yeah.
And so then when I moved, my junior and senior were somewhere else, and when I made some friends there, I took them to see it. And I was in the closet, and so still a little bit like trepidatious, like I don't know, what are they going to think? Are they going to think that I'm gay or something? And I'm like, oh well, that would have been good actually, and if they had been accepting. But so I took a few friends to see it, and we saw it a number of times together, because I didn't want to go see it alone. I mean, it's a communal experience.
Right.
And the whole thing with people, the shadow cast and the people yelling out the lines throughout the whole thing, and like, how do they know all these lines? This is great. And so the whole the interactive portion of it and the queerness of it really, really, really grabbed me.
Ron, I think you just nailed exactly why Rocky Horror is what it is and Shock Treatment is what it is. There were so many stories connected to Rocky Horror, just like yours, and there are no Shock Treatment stories like that.
Well, because I think Shock Treatment is a completely different movie.
It's a completely different. It's
Rocky Horror. You walk in and it's like it's embracing your like sexual,
and even more than that. It's not just it's.
And like Shock Treatment, it's basically saying like America's going to hell. Here's some sexy stuff.
Yes. Yes,
Well,
that
there's
is
Not like a movie you can embrace the same way.
right. Exactly.
There's not any sexy stuff in Shock Treatment. That's sort of there's a tiny little bit.
Just the tiniest bit of
Well, but all the doctors and nurses and stuff are basically dressed up in like the like Halloween sexy versions of the real thing.
yeah, and some of those songs are holdovers from, if the songs don't necessarily fit the narrative in Shock Treatment, it's because some of those songs were designed for the Rocky Horror sequel. I believe even the signature song, I think he might have adapted it, but there's a lot of theories about which songs were and what they were supposed to be in the Rocky Horror sequel. So Shock Treatment was, in theory, again, this is wild speculation I found on the internet, but Shock Treatment was supposed to be about them resurrecting the Rocky Horror from the original movie. You need a bit of shock treatment to get you jumping like a real live wire. That was supposed to be when they were bringing Rocky back to life, Frankenstein style.
Oh, okay. I made a list of all these themes in it, and part of the problem is that there's just so many. You know, it's
Yeah.
not very simple. So there's fascism, media, mental health, drugs, mental health drugs, fast food, conformity, fame, religion, narcissism / vanity, and in fact, they have a slogan at one point: sanity and vanity. But there's a lot of stuff in there. Like, how are you supposed to like keep track and connect with this and have this really fun time with it? It's like,
Yeah.
it is fun, but it's hard to, you know, how are you going to do a shadow cast for this? How are you going to go? How are you going to go through, throw toast for vanity?
Yeah.
It was hard. Like I was not looking forward to having to do something like a review of this, just because, like, I think what I said to Pete last night was, it feels like a sketchbook. Like, it feels like there's a lot of kind of ideas that weren't necessarily meant to be fitted together, and it's sort of jumping between a lot of different subjects and themes like very quickly.
And then the songs don't have as strong a connect. Again, that's based on the theory, like some of these songs weren't intended for the film and he was just repurposing them. Like Little Black Dress. Little Black Dress is not really about the themes of Shock Treatment. That is would be more at home in a Rocky Horror sort of setting. So you can see the clash there. I will say a song that fits perfectly into this is Me, Me, Me. Where Jessica Harper is, it's like that's pretty right there on the nose, and so not all the songs fit together. I don't, for some reason, again, and maybe I'm just on the same wavelength as Richard O'Brien. I connected to this movie on first viewing, and I was like, oh, I get what's going on here. But then again, I'm a story guy. I'm not a visual guy. I'm really keen on paying attention to story. And when I hear people say like Rocky Horror Picture Show, well, it doesn't have a story. You just go in for the Shadowcast experience. No, I came to Rocky Horror as watching it as a movie. So I've only been to one live Shadowcast, and I love the movie itself. And I've done it won't come out till Halloween, but I did a whole thing where I was like, no, the plot of Rocky Horror makes perfect sense. It's cohesive. And I have a whole long screed about how, no, the plot is not necessarily airtight, but it makes perfect sense to me. And I think it's a great movie and a great plot. I think the story of Shock Treatment is a great story, and it makes sense. I will take on any questions about plot holes, and I think I will be able to put them to rest for either film. I will take on that challenge.
I was gonna say, like, your plot summary of that was like beautifully succinct, because like
it's not a complex.
I could not figure out. Like, I figured out there's a game show. I figured out they're never leaving this TV studio. Janet becomes like sort of famous, but still isn't leaving the thing. Like, I kind of got that when she doesn't sign the papers at the beginning, that's a Chekhov's gun.
Yep.
I knew that was going to come up later.
Farley Flavors is his twin brother, and they were separated at birth. And Farley is trying to get Jessica Harper because she represents the life he didn't get to have. So he feels in order to complete his help, all the wealth and everything isn't quite enough. He needs to take his brother's wife and totally destroy his brother for the final piece of fulfillment. And again, so I don't know, I might be, so look at that through now in the 2021 post-Trump windows.
Mm.
All the fame, all of it, the wealth, and is not enough. You still have to go and destroy somebody else.
Mm.
You still can't.
Yeah.
Defiance of you still must be punished. It's not enough. And then, he's all into her, and then at the very end, she says, "Nope, I don't want to be a part of this. Actually, Brad's my guy." And he's like, "All right, the hell with you then," and just grabs the next blunt. He doesn't feel any love for her whatsoever. This is conquest. He doesn't understand. He can't ever understand love. And I know that sounds so but that is definitely in this movie. Brad wins in the end. Boring old schlub Brad wins because he actually loves Jana. Although he doesn't get to say much of anything in the whole film. But to me, the film clearly expresses that boring old Brad wins because he actually loves his wife. And she wins because she actually loves him and had the taste of the fame and the dark side and the consumerism and realized no fulfillment it comes from. How, again, in a 2021 lens, when she says, "I have to go be with my people. I have to go," she's into her newfound fame. She's exploring it. And I've got to go be in front of the audience. I can't be complete unless I have rallies. And this film has a studio audience that can't leave, never leaves. They sleep in that studio. And this Farley guy needs them to complete his world. He needs that audience of worshipers.
Right.
And and how when he starts mixing, his big thing that he's working on in the film is mixing religion and his own worship. He finally has to go to that level of worship and mix religion into the whole thing. And I don't know. And Dan and I made the mistake about talking about this movie last night. I usually have a policy like save it for the podcast because don't give all the goods away. You're gonna have that moment where you're like, I wish we were recording it. And I could not bring Dan over to my side on this, and he was like, it was fine, but there were other movies that did that better of kind of nailing what the American consumerist culture that took this full head of steam in the 80s went on to become.
There's a few movies that would have been like midnight movies pre-Rocky Horror because there was a lot of I'm more familiar with a lot of the stuff that came out between like 67 and 75 that isn't Rocky Horror than I am with Rocky Horror and the related stuff. And at least like a lot of the visual design of the film reminded me a lot of this William Klein movie from 1969 called Mr. Freedom, where it's like a superhero movie that was made. It looks like it was made for $15. The guy's just wearing like a football suit and like a store-bought Captain America hat or something like that. And he just kind of goes around beating the crap out of everything.
Actually, I'd like to see that. You might, if I watch that, I might be like, you know what, Dan, you were right. This nailed it. He puts on guy puts on a Captain America hat and starts beating people up. That does also nail the American.
It doesn't have the reality TV aspect. It has, I mean, maybe I'm just like connecting the things because they're about like their negative views of American normativity and their.
I don't know why, but I thought you would eat this movie up and be like, Pete, I can't believe if not for you, I wouldn't have discovered this gem. Thank you. You get the
I definitely
crown,
never would have
the
seen
nominee crown.
If not for you.
What's that?
I definitely never would have seen this movie if not for you. That much is for certain.
So half of that assessment is right, but I will not be receiving the nominee crown of best most grateful.
Well, I mean, so when you pitch the movie to me, and this is like in the intro video that we have on our YouTube page, like the thing we put out a call for was basically like, what is a movie if you're anybody and you have a movie where you think you're the only person in the world that loves this movie, we want you on.
Yeah.
And when you pitch Shock Treatment, like also like I know that Ron loves Rocky Horror, so I figured it would be a fun thing for Ron. And then just like the story of how people get how someone finds a movie in some cases is more interesting than the movie itself.
Yeah. You know what? Dan, I know something. I can look through the Zoom screen, and I know deep down, if you had the choice, you would watch Mexican Santa Claus before you watched Shock Treatment again. Don't deny it. Don't deny it. You would watch Willard again. If you had to rank all your Anomaly movies, you'd rank Willard higher than Shock Treatment, wouldn't you?
No, I would rank Shock Treatment higher than Willard.
Oh, okay. I withdraw my
I would
comments.
rather watch Mexican Santa Claus, though. You definitely hit me on the head with that one. It's in the other room. I could do that tonight. Have like a me party with just me.
No, you should be watching Shock Treatment again and be like, all these things are now I can see it with clear eyes.
Yeah, and I think it will be a lot more interesting the next time I see it, because like it kind of the things that okay, so the movie that it most reminded me of was Lichtomania.
And that is a huge gap. I have to rectify that. I should have watched that before we did this one, so we could talk about it in reference to its similarities to Shock.
Well, I mean, I could have like, I didn't quite put my finger right. I mean, I also only watched Shock Treatment like 3 days ago, but the things that strike me as similarities, like the themes about fascism and its relationship to U.S. pop culture, the use of like visual quotations in the film. There's a lot of use of visual quotations. There's like the American Gothic painting that's behind the I forget what the doctor's name is. There's the picture of Freud on his on the nightstand in his bedroom. A lot of the Farley Flavor stuff at the end of the film is framed exactly like the press conference in Citizen Kane, down to like the giant blown up black and white head behind their heads.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's
so,
a good call. I didn't catch that. I didn't make that Citizen Kane connection.
Oh yeah, that's like the picture they always use on the DVD case. That's why I think it probably is like etched in my memory.
Yeah.
But, yeah, because you got that like big picture of Orson Welles' head behind him while he's doing it. And I mean, and I guess like Citizen Kane is a movie about a person who's seduced by power and then loses all sense of love or grounding.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because you got like Kane's and all those failed marriages, and then the thing he's left with at the end is basically like a big warehouse full of stuff.
Yeah, but
like
really stuff.
Like a warehouse of like old DVDs and magazines and stuff. He's just a man surrounded by, he doesn't find love, but he's surrounded by like old magazines and DVDs, or was that
he had more capital to work with than I did.
So what would be your Rosebud? Would it be a sled, or would it be what DVD or VHS, or would it be the prison TV? I recommend to everybody listening, go to YouTube and watch Dan's prison TV video.
I'm trying to think, like the thing from childhood that's like an object that I probably, there's this old Zeb Roller 2000 pen that I have that doesn't work, that I hold on to because it reminds me of like drawing comics in my dad's office when I was very small, and it's a kind of pen they don't make anymore.
That sounds heartfelt and true. I was looking for like an old copy of like Playboy crosswords from the 70s. I know you like Dan's a guy, if he said I read Playboy for the articles, I would actually believe him. He would be one of the few people I would believe. I believe.
Yeah, I used to go.
And it has good articles.
Like, there's some good articles. I was buying them for the cartoons.
Oh, the cartoons. That's right. Okay, not the cartoons.
That's like most of the Jules Pfeiffer stuff. But yeah. here's a 20-year-old pen that I've been holding on to for sentimental reasons.
Oh, is that the one where you turn it over and?
No, just a pen.
Oh, so it's not a clothes removal the pen where you turn it upside down and somebody's clothes drops off?
No, just a Zeb Roller 2000. I don't know if it's
okay.
So what about it makes it your Rosebud?
My dad bought probably like 200 of these at some point in the early 1990s. So anytime I would look for a pen in the house when I was younger, it was always one of these things. And this is the last one left.
Wow. Do they make refills for them?
I don't know if you can refill it. It's like oh, actually no, it does come. No, I don't think it opens. I think it's supposed to be a disposable pen. It's like it's a roller ball, so it when it was working, it worked kind of it worked kind of like a pilot pen. It's a little bit chunkier, so I feel like I got a little bit more control over it than a pilot pen. And you know, it's like it's gold. It looks like flashy when you're 5 years old or whatever.
Now I'm sure this is a really interesting question. I'm trying to think of what
What
my
is your
rosebud
rosebud?
is. The only thing I could think of is something that I created rather than some external artifact. So, I'm, what's an external thing? A toy or a book or something.
I'm gonna make mine like an actual like rosebud to confuse everybody.
It's like a pressed flower.
Yeah, it's a pressed flower, and they were like, well, "What is it? What is it a metaphor for?" And it's like, no, it's a flower. Sometimes a rosebud is just a rosebud.
And you were forced to get rid of that, get rid of that pressed flower?
Yes, yeah, there was something in my mom inherited a gold mine and pressed flowers. She was allergic to pressed flowers or something.
There we go.
There's a whole movie.
Wait, it just hit me. Dan, you have your rosebud. It doesn't work.
Oh, okay.
Rosebud. You have half of it. You have half a bud.
Well, okay. Let me think, Smurries. There's definitely something. I mean, it can't be my comic book collection because I sold half of it and I didn't feel anything.
Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. Actually, it is like Rosebud because Charles Foster Kane has the sled, right?
Oh yeah, because it's sitting in Xanadu and they can't figure out why it's there.
Yeah.
Yes.
You don't realize that that's Rosebud. Okay. So
Oh wait, that ruins my idea for the 100th episode then.
Oh, what's that?
Well, because we were going to get an Orson Welles impersonator and bring him on the show, and he was going to be asking me how to buy sleds on eBay.
I thought the 100th episode should be Shock Treatment Revisited. Shock Treatment Revisited. And Dan will be like, I have a whole new perspective on this film after talking with Pete.
You know what we could do? We could have Rocky Horror and Shock Treatment, sort of like, I don't know.
I would love to.
There's we do like the Homicide Law and Order crossover with like.
I love talking about talking about the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and the reason I'm taking so long to do the episode for the horror show is I really like want to get it right, and it's massive. So and I want to put it out around Halloween, or I was going to put it out in November because based on the film, you can figure out like the events in the film are taking place during November. Although timelines don't work out because they're listening to a Nixon speech that was made, so it does become. Right. So, yeah, they're listening to that speech. So it might be difficult. Like you can't nail a year to so what year in November, but it at least is November. But so let's like I wanted to bring so Rocky, this is why I was like coming into this, I was really sure like let's make sure we just talk about Shock Treatment and not Rocky Horror. But I realized that's futile. You can't. And who doesn't like talking about Rocky Horror? But the difference is like there was a podcast I listened to where these two great gals, they break down the movie into 5-minute increments, and they do like a half hour to an hour on just every 5 minutes of the film. There is nothing like that for Shock Treatment. But here's the other thing. This would not work. HBO back in the 80s, Friday night double features. I remember when I was a kid.
I feel like this would have done a lot better as like a TV movie because then
probably
people discovered it over a longer period.
I totally agree with that. But HBO Friday night double features. I remember back in the day, we'd be like, it's superhero night on HBO Friday night double features. We've got Flash Gordon and Conan. I'm like, oh, what great memories of that. But clearly, like Rocky Horror and Shock Treatment don't make a good double feature together. They don't go together like that. Both of you, what movie would you have on the double feature with Shock Treatment?
Lisztomania.
That's the one. That seems to be the obvious one, and I haven't seen it, and now I feel grossly inadequate in this conversation for not seeing Lisztomania.
Well, I mean that like Lisztomania or. I mean, I guess there's a few ways you could go about it, right? Because, like, you could go for a specific theme and bring out one of the themes in Shock Treatment using the other movie on the double feature. You could go for just, like, the kind of, if you like this, you'll also like this kind of double feature. I mean, I only like Network and Shock Treatment would make an interesting, and you brought that up earlier.
Yeah.
Not in the context of a double feature, but
See, I would put Lisztomania with Rocky Horror, Lisztomania with Rocky Horror, because
Ooh.
there's the big camp factor, and there is this. I mean, Lisztomania is a very hedonistic movie, which is
Right,
so
that's
that
true.
part of it ties in very well with the with Rocky Horror. So it looks. I don't know if this may be I'm trying to make this too categorical. I don't know if that's the right word, but divide this up too much. But Dan, you're looking at it somewhat more in terms of the themes of fascism and all that. And I'm looking at more as a sort of the stylistic aspect of it.
Or actually, what might be interesting with it is one of those like not the like Warhol movies where it's just like not like Empire or Blowjob or any of those, but like Flesh for Frankenstein, Blood for Dracula, any of those Paul Morrissey, Andy Warhol movies that would
Yeah.
have been on the same midnight circuit with well, probably they were a bit before Rocky Horror, but they would have been playing in the same theaters just a few years apart.
You know,
Or like some Cowboys, or actually Andy Warhol's Bad. That might be a good one.
Ron, did you have one for Shock Treatment? A pairing?
What was that?
Did you have a pairing for a Friday night double feature for Shock Treatment?
So when Dan I think Dan mentioned the Apple to me for some reason in the
the Apple. Yeah, this reminded me of the Apple a bit.
I still haven't seen the Apple. That's an important one for being an Anomaly fan, right?
Yeah. Oh, right. Yes.
I haven't listened to that
really
episode
enjoyed.
either. I haven't listened to the episode you guys did about the Apple,
For
but I have
months-
to.
So for months, I was thinking I wanted to do the Apple, but I was like, had to be in the right. I just wanted it to be at the right moment and feel right about it. And every so often I bring it up. It's like, no. Yeah, and finally I was like, you know what? Now I'm ready to do the Apple. And the reason was that I'd seen the Apple. I saw it about now I don't know what time is like and when and who and what. But when I saw the Apple, I wasn't exactly sober. So I had a very, very interesting, and it wasn't alcohol that I'm talking about. And so I had this very intense experience with it. So I wanted to see what it was like stone cold sober.
Yeah.
Very different movie, very different experience. Actually, no, it wasn't that different now that I think about it. It was a different experience.
It's a pretty trippy movie. Like I totally know what you're saying there. Like the second or third time I ever got stoned, I went with some friends. I just got into college, and we went to go see. God, I can't even remember the name of it. It's like that movie with Beyonce where like she's married to Idris Elba, and this like skinny white lady in her office keeps trying to steal her man, and then they end up having this like Matrix style cat fight at the end of it.
Uh-huh.
And I was like stoned out of my mind, and I was just like, this is the funniest shit I've ever seen. I'm pretty sure if I watched that again, it would be a very different experience. But
So I need both of your help with this, because when I thought of that, what was a movie I would pair with this for a Friday night double feature? Because Rocky Horror is not the right pairing, and I don't know why. And I maybe I haven't fully made the connection, but why the movie that kept popping up in my head was Videodrome.
oh yeah, Videodrome would be a good double feature.
So I'm not crazy in that regard.
Yeah, because they both have
Okay.
and I think there's an element of like either O'Brien or Sharman, probably O'Brien, was reading some kind of Marshall McLuhan stuff before he was, or at the very least he was absorbing it from the culture, because those were pretty popular books at that point that people would have been talking about quite a bit. And you have a lot of kind of like visual equivalents of ideas that McLuhan puts forward. In Videodrome, you've got literally just this parody of McLuhan talking on the TV, the Brian Oblivion character. But yeah, you have this trying to think where to start with this. Like McLuhan's greatest fear with television was that it would shift society from being a society based around text to a society based around images. and he saw the end point of a society based around communication through images being essentially a new tribalism. And that comes through a bit in Videodrome. I think Shock Treatment, the audience brings that home like in a much more coherent fashion than McLuhan did a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so that, and it also, I think it brings out his fears with that, which were that the emotional relationship we have to images is very different than the emotional relationship that we establish with long strings of prose.
Yeah.
Or poetry or something like that. And so he saw the society was going to become increasingly sensationalistic and sensation seeking, essentially, which I think happened. I think like the primary mode of interpersonal communication, at least on the internet, or like in media objects, not like people just talking to each other, is like memes are basically it's just like a short Rorschach blot, or not like a Rorschach blot because it's meant to elicit a specific reaction, but it's purely emotional and it's stripped of any kind of context usually.
Yeah.
And I think they kind of bring that through in the movie where you have this pretense of mental health, and then you have the what everybody really wants out of the situation is either cult-like adoration or the feeling of being a mass crowd. Like when I'm studying TV stuff, a lot of the fascination for me is this feeling of being part of a large group while sitting alone in your house.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And like TV kind of realized that, like that's I think the underlying sentiment behind the phrase event television.
Mm-hmm.
Is that like the reason you're supposed to be watching it is because everybody else is watching it, and it is this kind of trial, like almost like a pep rally.
Yeah, you're having a communal experience all alone. Yeah.
As opposed to Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Ah.
Where you go back, but I just thought of a pairing. I said the Apple only because it was sort of, well,
they're both like early '80s.
Actually,
both kind of over the top musicals.
What was that?
They're both like early '80s dystopian, maximalist musicals, I guess you would say.
Yeah, but that's not the pairing I would do. They Live.
Oh, you're after my heart. With They Live. They Live is one of my favorite movies of all time. You're absolutely right. It's a perfect. It's thematically, it's a perfect pairing. Yeah.
Then I went from They Live, and I think, what would be a good pairing with They Live? Buckaroo Banzai.
Oh, sweet Buckaroo Banzai. Delicious.
A good pairing with Buckaroo Banzai would, so I don't know, I could kind of keep going with this and like, well, this one kind of works with this, and that kind of works with that. And so like, it doesn't work with the other one, but each thing, there's some overlap there, or the similar sensibility or the similar themes. There's multiple degrees of separation. Right, so.
Now, a big blank spot we've left here, and I'm not the biggest musical guy. I love theater. I was in theater for a long time, but I just, I didn't have the natural pipes to be, a singer, and the dancing was really, really hard. So really the only time I was in musicals when they just didn't have enough males to fill out a cast, and they throw me in the chorus and whatnot. I love singing. I love doing karaoke, but there is just, there are things like, if you don't have a certain build, there are some sports you can't play. And if, your pipes don't, vocal pipes don't work a certain way, you're not going to get that 11th hour song in the theater. But so I'm not a musically oriented sort of person. It's like a foreign language to me. I like music a lot, but I don't know, if somebody starts talking about technical things, why they like music. I don't know like what they're talking. Like, did you hear what he was doing? He was using the guitar, and I'm like, I don't study it. But this movie is a musical, so that's a long way of getting around to what's your favorite song in Shock Treatment?
The opening song, actually, Denton.
Denton. You've got no pretension.
Where the heart is, you're okay. Denton, Denton, I just like to mention you're the home of youth. You're America's truth. You're Denton, Denton, USA. And none of the other songs match up, like kind of live up to that.
Right.
Right.
And that, my friends, like we've talked all this time, and we didn't even get to part of the appeal of like this movie that has nothing to do with story, nothing to do. There's some catchy tunes in it that exist almost independently of the film itself. What about you, Dan?
I liked oh shit, later in the movie they're kind of like transitioning from, because like most of the music earlier in the movie, kind of like Rocky Horror, is supposed
I'm
to
sorry, I shouldn't have asked Dan that. Ron, just sing Denton again.
Denton, Denton, you've got no pretension.
I have all the pretension. I stole it from, but no, like there's like something in the middle. I think it might be the scene where Jessica Harper's like walking around and she's got the new dress and the new look, but it sounds like one of those like coked out new wavy songs on like Fleetwood Mac Tusk or something. I like that a lot.
Is it the one where she's walking down an alley?
I think so, yeah.
I'm looking at the song list and I'm trying to remember. Let's see, Little Black Dress.
I thought you were going to go Dan because of the Freudian connection. I thought you were going to go, look what I did with my id. Look what I did to my id. Did either of you fall in love with Toaster? Oh, Toaster. Refrigerator, don't close the door on me. Oh, toothpaste. Oh, it's toothpaste. Don't put the squeeze on me. That song's so dumb and so wonderful about the angst of, you know, like long-term marriage and then trying to fill the void with appliances and these things.
Doesn't even have to be that long term. Like I was doing it after like 2 years.
Right. But to me, that song just nails, you know, consumerist culture where there is a void deep in my soul and I'm buying all these things and it just ain't working. It's not filling this void. It's not my favorite song, but
they hadn't found the right appliances.
Yeah, it's like if only I could just find the right, you know, the new Swiffer. There was an Onion article that was like, new Swiffer fails to fill the existential void in his hearts. Product. We were trying to make the product that was going to cure this problem, and it seems that the new Swiffer is not working to fill the void in people's soul.
So I think this in my mind, this one of the reasons why this wasn't a success where Rocky Horror is that the lines are very clever and the ideas are very smart, but the music isn't as catchy and fun. In Rocky Horror, almost every song, in fact, the one song that doesn't quite work that well and isn't as catchy is cut out. Right? It was in the original. I can't remember the name of the song. It was Once in a While. It was in the Rocky Horror Show, the stage musical. It's not in the movie, and good. Like,
yeah.
It doesn't belong. Whereas here, it was a really mixed bag. There were some songs that were really catchy, and to some degree, they were trying to recapture what was going on there. So Denton is one of them. I think Little Black Dress is sort of like the time warp, kind of. But then a lot of them are just sort of this early 80s pop kind of. They're not as catchy. They're not quite as fun. They're fine and they're enjoyable to listen to. But the lyrics are great.
The titular song, Shock Treatment, I'm not a loco with motive to suture myself. I've been a cynic for too many years. Like, I'm not a loco with motive to suture myself. Like, there's a lot of clever stuff going on in that song. Where, and I think I want to make this an analogy for, this is how I feel about the creator, Richard O'Brien. He was too clever. He was too clever for, you know, for consumption. And this is a movie, The Shock Treatment isn't the movie he wanted to make, but it's clear he put a lot of effort into it. He really thought it all out. And that I can see beyond the movie's, the final product. And maybe this is the thing. I keep substituting sometimes when there's a flaw, I substitute, I can see the intent. I can see what he was trying to do. And then I make that, I compensate for whatever flaws are in the film. So, and I do the same thing with Rocky Horror and its story and plot. I'm like, no, but I get what he was going for there. So
Right.
that makes it all okay. Whereas I do realize is a totally subjective experience for me. And other people are not going to have that, that same experiment or
Well, but
that
it's just
same
like
experience.
the incompleteness of it and the interactivity, like especially with Rocky Horror, like it's all about the interactive experience. Like I think the reason I didn't quite I mean, part of it was the fact I was 10 years old, but the other part of it was like I'm just sitting in a living room with like some kid I know from school, and it's just sort of like, oh, okay, I don't understand what the big deal is here. And then you go to like the live show where you got the shadow cast and people are
Yeah.
throwing shit, and it's like and you realize like like the time Ron took me to it, it felt a lot like going to a religious service, like a really rowdy religious
Yeah.
service.
That's exactly what Susan Sarandon said about it. She was like, "Oh, it's like the Catholic Mass.
Yeah, kind of.
Midnight Mass. Yeah.
It's midnight mass."
Dan, was that the only time you seen it live when I took you?
That's the only time I have seen that live. The only other like interaction movie I saw live was The Room, which is great live when everybody's
Okay.
throwing like the plastic spoons at the screen and stuff.
Uh-huh.
I've planted my flag on the territory of I think the movie is good as a movie, and that is not a popular opinion. So huge Rocky Horror fans are like, well, you've never actually seen it until you've had the experience. And I don't disagree with them.
That's me.
But I don't disagree with that. But I also I firmly say with both these films, no, I think they're both good movies. I think
So
they're
for
both
you, it's more of
well-written.
a private religion.
It is my own personal one, and I'm desperately seeking converts, and it's not very fruitful. And I just wish that Richard O'Brien, I just wish all the accolades he gets for Rocky Horror and all the interest in that, I wish that could have translated to, I just want a third movie. I just want a third movie. Like I don't know if Ron, were you ever hear of Revenge of the Old Queen, which was, I think he was trying to get the sequel. Like his first attempt at this at the sequel was Rocky Kicks Up His Heels, which ended up turning into Shock Treatment. But I think later there was rumblings that he was going to give a sequel, Revenge of the Old Queen. Of course, circumstances of funding, and then the fact Tim Curry's health went south, and it's almost like, well, if you can't get Tim Curry, why do it? But there was a song that was leaked from that attempt called the Moon Drenched Shores of Transylvania, and I listened to that song and I was like, this movie would have been amazing. That song was everything I wanted out of a sequel to Rocky Horror Picture Show, and that is all I have that is all I'm going to get in this life of Richard O'Brien's third movie. I need more. I only have 2 films as a frame of reference and comparison for this guy's work, and yet in the meantime, I've got I'm trying to think of the right example. I don't want to trash any franchises that people love and hold dear, but in the meantime, you get 6-7 Saw movies. You get the one we reviewed last night, The Strangers. Obviously, I wasn't a big fan of that movie, but then the thing that hurt the most was afterwards when I started to research it, I was like, oh, that got a sequel. And I can't get another Richard O'Brien film. Same with Panos Cosmatos. I only have 2, but he will probably make another one. I guess it takes him 10 years, but he did Beyond the Black Rainbow and Mandy. I only have 2. Poor me.
There's some I mean, like, did you ever see The Mother and the Whore by John Eustache?
I have not.
Oh, that
No.
would be a fun one to cover on here. It's like a French New Wave hangout movie. It's just like these kind of weirdos in Paris hanging around a coffee shop, and it's got Jean-Pierre Lud, the guy that was in 400 Blows. But yeah, that guy John Eustache, he only did 2 movies, and then there was nothing after.
You got nothing.
Like Monty Hellman, there's only like 3 or 4 movies, and most of them are like Cockfighter's a great movie. They're good movies. They just, like, for whatever reason, the person left the industry.
Yeah. I mean, and I should be grateful too, in that I should be grateful not just that I have two but that just the fact that Rocky Horror exists. It
Mhm.
makes me feel good about the world. You
Mm.
know, that this movie exists. It actually got made, and it actually became a phenomenon that is now I think embraced more than ever. I think Rocky Horror's influence is as strong now as it's
Well, I
ever
think
been.
the culture came around to it because, like, in
The
1975,
culture caught
it was,
up.
like, it was shock and spectacle, and a lot of what was seen as shock and spectacle in the 1970s now looks like people trying to talk about, gender role
Mhm.
stuff. I'm a basic bitch, straight white guy, but like, yeah, like a lot of it seems to be like like you were saying with the horror movies, like these kind of like midnight exploitation type movies were the only parts of the culture where any of this stuff was being addressed directly.
Yeah, and yes, and I think the culture caught up, and I almost feel like post Trump, I'm singing this shock treatment song because we've seen it. Now we've seen the final, and you could make the argument too, but Reagan doesn't take office until 1981. This movie was
Yeah.
made in 1981.
Mhm.
That just blows my mind that this guy from New Zealand could, or maybe am I giving him too much credit? Because it probably would have been
I
obvious to a lot
mean,
of people at the
Well,
time.
there were
Thatcherism.
there were
Thatcher.
probably
Thatcherism, yeah.
political problems in New Zealand. I don't know what they are because I'm not cultured, but
But for me as a kid, growing up Republican and Catholic, and not having memories of the 70s. I really don't have, I was born in 77, but I don't have real memories of the 70s. I didn't see the Rocky Horror Picture Show until I was in my 20s, and it was on VH1. It was a murky thing that existed in the cultural background, and I heard people talk about it. I had no idea though, like, what is this? And I saw the lips. The lips were like weird. And now, and then I finally saw in my 20s, I'm like, oh, I get it. And I was sitting alone in the living room watching VH1. So props to VH1 for introducing me to the finally where I got to watch the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And
and actually with the lips, I always kind of wondered, like, is there a
oh, it's
connection
so
between that and the Rolling Stones logo?
I don't think so. And I was trying to figure out, and now it escapes me what the inspiration for the lips was. It was some piece of European art, but I never. Have you ever seen anything like that well, you guys might have, because we're in Anomaly, the island of misfit movies. But for me, the lips I don't know why more
There's
people
some
haven't
really
stolen it.
early television where they'll do like extreme lighting on a specific body part as like an
Yeah.
Easter egg. They'll just have like lips or like an ear or something in the darkness. I forget exactly what.
This is why I
There was a
don't
gag
think
like that on the Chevy Chase show, but that was a lot later.
I saw the exact thing you're talking about. I know exactly the thing on
Yeah.
the Chevy Chase show you were talking about. And I that is the one thing from that show where I was like, that was pretty interesting.
Hmm.
Where he does the doo doo boop 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 and his three of his
Yeah, and
faces.
it's just like yeah.
Nobody else knows about that. I had to really search on YouTube to find that because I saw it as a kid and I wasn't sure if I had imagined it that something like that could have aired on network television.
Uh-huh.
And but so am I sounding crazier or not? Where there is some kind of you could have given me maybe 100 years and I wouldn't have come up with the Rocky Horror lips thing. I think this guy is
think
brilliant.
Uh-huh.
like silhouetted lips, that was a big thing in what was that art movement with Toulouse-Lautrec? I feel like there's definitely like it's a thing that would be interesting to research because I feel like it was somewhere
The
before
lips
then.
immediately evoke two things simultaneously, and then you throw on the song underneath it.
Because
But
I
the
think
lips
the
evoke.
Rolling Stone logo was around by then because that the copy of Exile on Main Street that I have has it on the inner labels.
So right off the bat, like the instant you start watching this movie, these lips evoke sexuality, but it's also the lips aren't perfectly sexy. There's realism and teeth, like kind of dirty teeth, and it's both ooh, that's kind of sexy. It's kind of weird. What is going on here? And that's why I'm saying, like, the very first time I watched the movie, I'm like, what is going on here? What the hell is this? How did this get made? And why have I never seen this wonderful, wonderful weirdness before? And I had the same reaction to Shock Treatment. I'm like, this is just, I don't know. There's some radio signal that my brain is tuned to that Shock Treatment just immediately hit.
And that's the feeling I had when I ran into those Cassavetes movies when I was a teenager. Pretty much.
Whoa. All right, pack your bags. We're going on a guilt trip. I knock you on the Cassavetes fanhood all the time. Now the shoe's on the other foot. Ouch.
Well, no, it's that feeling,
Now I know how it feels. I won't knock John Cassavetes or your references. I haven't even watched a Cassavetes movie to even know to knock it. I'm just knocking you for bringing it up all the time. I was going to suggest a drinking game. Like every time he mentions Cassavetes for the Anomaly podcast, you have to take a drink. Now I feel bad.
No. I mean, it's that was the background of that. That was the first thing I really studied intensively in terms of film stuff. So it's I end up going back to it a lot because that's how I ended up framing a lot of critical stuff.
Yeah,
in my head.
You even managed to bring it into Shock Treatment and Rocky Horror.
Yeah, I mean, did you have a movie like? Well, I mean, it sounds like Rocky Horror was like that for you.
Well, for me, like out of body
both of you,
or
well, you were a little bit older, but what's the first movie you remember seeing where it was like I'm gonna devote a lot of my life to thinking about movies, where you would like your conversion moment?
Well, I mean, so I the first movie I ever remember being in the movie theater for was, and you're not gonna like this, The Empire Strikes Back, and that was just transformative. That imprinted on me something in my brain where that is just, it's part of my DNA. Like Empire Strikes Back, the original Star Wars movies are part of my DNA. They cannot be denied. I can reject them, but there's still the framework that I'm going to view, all these things through. And I can also objectively stand back and say, the phenomena of Star Wars might not have been the best thing for the culture at large, but it is an involuntary response. When I watch The Mandalorian and Luke Skywalker comes in and I start getting misty, it's an involuntary response.
Yeah.
I can try and deny it, but that's an involuntary response. My framework for understanding the world and you have different movies that do that at different points in your life. I'm glad I didn't see the Rocky Horror Picture Show until my 20s. Now I think as the Republican kid I would have shut the Rocky Horror Picture Show out. It wasn't until in my 20s after theater that I could be like, this is amazing. This is wonderful.
So so would you say, Ron, that that movie for you was going to see Rocky Horror when you were in high school, or?
I'm going through, I might need you to re-ask the question, so the first movie I remember ever seeing, I just remember one little bit of it, was Escape to Witch Mountain. That's the first movie.
Oh man, yeah.
The first movie I remember in its entirety and being excited about was Mary Poppins, and also the Muppet movie. I wasn't, the Mary Poppins was they brought it back because I wasn't around for Mary Poppins.
It's funny because that's like two of my earliest movie watching memories are Mary Poppins and the Muppet movie, and they were both like, I think they'd just been put out on, or maybe my dad just had them on VHS for some reason. But they were around the house, like that and Home Alone. I probably watched all three of those like 100 times before I was 6, and then never again. But
I watched the opening credits of Escape to Witch Mountain, and it gives me, I don't know what it is. These are involuntary responses, and I get these chills. It's evocative. And, Witch Mountain ain't no great shakes. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't want to offend anybody. It ain't no great shakes, but there's something about that that's another thing. It's a DNA reaction to that. I'll rewatch that Escape to Witch Mountain intro.
I remember being scared. Oh, I remember being really excited about The Cat from Outer Space, but we came away from that. This was the best movie ever. This was great. It's a terrible movie. But I just realized that
You know what movie I had that experience with?
wait, I just realized the two movies I mentioned that I remember in their entirety and excited about are both musicals: The Muppet Movie and Mary Poppins.
Wow.
Okay, you were saying, Dan.
So yeah, that like experience of seeing a movie that I thought was the coolest shit ever when I saw it in the theater, and I was like, this is this was a great movie. I was so entertained. The Joel Schumacher Batman and Robin with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I saw that when I was 8 years old, and I was like, holy crap, they got like bat vehicles, and I was just like, I remember having a great time when I went to the theater to see that movie. And then a few years later, I found out that nobody thought it was a good movie.
Did you unironically laugh at Arnold Schwarzenegger's ice puns?
I don't know if I caught them. Like I was watching it as just sort of like, wow, it's like comic books come to life kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And,
I have that my movie in that
since I was 8.
My movie in that vein is Flash Gordon. When I was pretty young.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot about Flash Gordon. Yes,
yeah.
I remember exactly being out. Sorry, I'm excited about this.
No, please interject.
Thunder. You were saying Flash Gordon.
Well, you still held on to those Al Williamson, like the comic book adaptation of it. I got it when you dropped those comic books off.
Who, me? Oh yeah, right. It was that. It was like 3. Yes, that's right. I forgot about that.
3 issues. It was like Gold Key, I think, did it, or one of those like not Marvel DC.
Yeah, and I don't know how many times I've seen that. I can't remember. Oh God.
I'm not the only one anymore.
Yeah, I know. It's
Ask good for whom the phone rings, it rings for thee.
All right, now is the perfect opportunity to just crap talk Ron. Oh crap. I didn't even get going.
No, I hit the buzzer and I'm like, I'm not going out there. I think I know what it is.
The Saratoga Horror Show has a much more hostile atmosphere than here. Like somebody gets up to go to the bathroom, that is the time to, you trash them. And there's like and alliances, like you team up, and make the third person feel like the outcast. And that switches, alliances will switch.
And before I forget, where can people find the Saratoga Horror Podcast?
Oh, yeah, the best thing is just go right on YouTube. It's under Saratoga Artist Syndicate is the channel. You just jump on YouTube, and if you type in, and this is the thing I shamelessly do, is I try to put Saratoga in everything. So if you type in Saratoga in horror, you'll see the Saratoga Horror Show come up. And I'd like to brag, we are the premier Saratoga Springs horror movie review channel. And I would actually be thrilled if we weren't. If there was another one, I'd be like, you know what, that's okay. I'm glad that there is a Saratoga horror group. You
want the competition, so then there's also like, that you're the better one.
They want the competition, one to know better, but two, just that there's a subculture of horror movie fans in Saratoga. Just that existing.
There's a lot of people that are really into those around the Saratoga area. Like I kind of what's his face? The Super Dark guys. They're like really into horror movies. I need to horror movies and like Wes Anderson shit, and I would take horror movies over the Wes Anderson stuff any day.
But I'm so offended by the Super Dark guys and their slavish devotion to live entertainment. And not doing enough YouTube. And it's like, well, Pete, that's kind of what we do. It's the live entertainment. It's the shows. That's what we do. We're not like horror movie review people. No, your lack of YouTube horror, Saratoga-based YouTube.
They were doing that public access show, the sketch show, for a while. That I don't know if they were posting that to YouTube. They were posting.
I saw a couple. Yeah, I saw a couple of things, and it's kind of avant-garde, sort of.
I pitched, like, there was a point a few years ago, probably like 6 or 7 years ago, I want to say now, where I was like, I wrote probably like 60 or 70 pieces of flash fiction, and I would use them as stand-up bits.
Yeah.
And I pitched some of those as like, hey, if you guys want to adapt this for video, like, just, put my name on there and do whatever you want with it. Yeah, I never got, I was almost going to work with them on one of the things, and then like a thing came up, and then I just never got back in the loop.
That is one thing I will say I actually miss about. I have adapted to quarantine remarkably. Like I actually was like, wow, this has been. Now I don't. I by no means do I want to minimize the impact of it, and there's real and bad suffering going on. I'm just speaking purely from a personal point of view where it to me in a lot of ways it's been the greatest extended snow day of all time, and so many things that I was like, I didn't need that, I didn't need that, I didn't need any of that. I haven't eaten a meal prepared outside my home in months, and it's wonderful. But I will admit one of the things is going to the Super Dark Mondays at DA's. I really enjoyed that. Man, such a wide variety of bands and music that you just never get. I like open mics. I like open mics in the same way I like horror movies. Like you're gonna get
You're gonna get
a lot of good, you're gonna get a lot of bad, but you're once in a while you find that gem and you were there and you saw them before.
Oh yeah, that's how I feel about like Amanda Platt.
Amanda Platt?
So she was like a Skidmore kid. She was doing country music on a banjo at the open mics. She was like, I mean, the banjo playing wasn't like she could get through the songs on the banjo, but the songs themselves were great. And I was like, holy crap, this woman is going places, and she's on like CMT. She's been touring the country. She does it professionally.
You were there first.
Wow.
We had her on the WSPN show that I had once, and I actually when I was shooting Plain Songs, when Brian and I were on the road, we just like because she's out in Asheville now, and we were over in Waynesville, which is right next to Asheville, and I sent her a Facebook message, and we ended up crashing at her place and meeting her manager and stuff for a few days. And yeah, she's just like she's really, I have nothing but nice things to say about Amanda Platt. And the band is called the Honey Cutters. And you could probably find them online pretty easily. They got like 3 or 4 albums out now.
I so dread doing this, but I dread doing this because I never get to talk about this movie. But should we wrap up Shock Treatment?
Sure. Oh, I just want to say one thing. I just thought of something like Flash Gordon plus Mary Poppins equals Rocky Horror. Now I understand myself and how I got there.
Wow, we got to an equation. Yes, Flash Gordon plus Rocky Horror or plus Mary Poppins equals Rocky Horror.
That was the logic. That was the only way we could possibly conclude the journey we've been on for the last 2 hours.
Yeah. So no, Pete, you were gonna say.
Oh, so no, I hate wrapping up a conversation about Shock Treatment because this is the most I can try to explain it to people, but nobody's seen this movie. Nobody's seen this movie, and it's hard to find. It's just not accessible. This isn't on. And Dan, like you said, this should have been like on TV. This should have been on HBO. It would have, had. That's its happy existence, not as like the stage show or the shadow cast. But the happy existence would be this is a thing that runs on
HBO in the middle of the night. This would have been remembered as like a beloved cult film.
Yes,
one showed it like after school at some point. Like. I feel like there's got to be an interesting history of like rights issues somewhere.
I would imagine.
It seems like it would be a really easy sell because HBO was picking up stuff like this all the time to run into, especially because like they probably could have gotten it for like if it flopped at the box office, I can't imagine they were gonna charge like buco bucks for syndication rights. Yeah.
If it ever became public domain, I'd be off to the races. If it becomes public domain, off to the races with me and incorporating it.
Well, I mean, we can screen it like whenever the pandemic's over. I have the living room set up as like I want to start like a little film society thing to screen stuff, but and because it's my living room, I don't need to get the rights. I was thinking about doing that over at like the empty lot over in Ballston Spa, but I would, if I wasn't, and I do have a lot of public domain stuff that's like pretty weird. Like I've been watching a lot of silent Russian animation the last week. That's all like public domain stuff. But I think if you were doing public screenings like that, you'd have to at least like figure out how to not get sued or shut down or something.
Yeah.
But
Anomany presents the Dan Levine Friday Night Film Festival.
The
yeah,
Friday Night
something
Film
like that.
Festival. Now, what, Dan? I heard you were saying that you were going to show the complete series Dream On. Like you're a huge Dream On fan, and you wanted to do like you're going to do like 40 episodes. Just each Anomany episode is an episode of Dream On,
I don't think
dissecting
there
it.
were 40 episodes of Dream On. It was only on for like 2 years.
We there should be a spin-off series, HBO crap.
It's just like, well, it's like Arliss without the sports.
I never watched Arliss, so I feel reluctant to knock it.
You're lucky.
Never having seen it.
Arliss was so like I only ever caught a few episodes when they used to play it a lot, like because we had HBO in the house. I didn't have a very strict bedtime, so I would catch like middle of the night HBO stuff sometimes.
Did you ever see? I think there might have only been one episode. Perversions of Nature.
No.
William Shatner was in the episode. I think he directed it. His daughter was in it. They were going to make it like it was going to be like a sexy sci-fi show where, it's HBO and we can do. This is long before Westworld, before the golden age of television.
Great.
I think there was only one
This is
episode.
like mid-90s. You're saying?
I want. Ooh, God. I think it might have been mid to late 90s. Perversions of Nature.
Yeah, because there were a few things that they like Ralph Bakshi, the Fritz the Cat guy. He got a show greenlit from HBO that was not very good, but it ran for 6 episodes. It was like a sci-fi anthology show called Spicy City, which is also like the worst name for a TV. Like it, right? It sounds like it's just like a place in a strip mall. Oh shit, there were a few other ones. UPN had a few of those like kind of like off-brand Twilight Zone kind of things early on too.
Do you like The Hitchhiker though? Well, I mean that's an anthology series, so to say you like it as a
some episodes are better than others. I have not. At some point, I need to watch all of it just because of the historical significance of it.
Man, you're still in movie God, the movie masochism phase that I abandoned in Blockbuster Video in the late 90s. You, sir, suffer from movie masochism where, well, I've got to watch it all just for historical significance. No, you don't, sir.
Watching every single episode of Sanford and Son in order.
You don't have to do these things to yourself.
I'm having a lot of fun with the Sanford.
You can reach out. All right. I mean, I guess, but I mean, to be like, oh, I'm going to watch the whole series of The Hitchhiker and like just for historical relevance.
I'm watching like oh shit, the one that's kind of like masochistic is I'm watching all of Beverly Hills Bunts.
I didn't even know that existed. In fact, I'm questioning that it does. What is Beverly Hills Bunts?
It was a 13 episode spinoff of Hill Street Blues with Detective Bunts. And it's the first show that David Milch of Deadwood ever got a creator credit on. And there's like some interesting stuff where I feel like I get a better sense of what his preoccupations as a creator are. But oh my God, when that guy fucking flops. Like
Was he
Gone from Cincinnati?
No, I never watched that. Wouldn't that be in the HBO Crap podcast?
There's one great episode of it, and the rest of it is just sort of like, holy shit, how is this on television? But it had
it's like a Jesus metaphor, isn't it?
Yeah, and he had the JFC, right? It had the best pitch of any show ever made, though. Like I saw this interview with David Milch. He's talking to some college class, and HBO says like, okay, we're canceling Deadwood, but we want another show from you. What about surfing? And he's like, well, what if we made a show about how in the wake of 9/11, the American public has been so narcotized by mass media that they become capable of committing a genocide. And the HBO executive, without missing a beat, is like, but it's going to have sexy people surfing, right? And he's like, of course, that's essential. and I was like, I have to watch this now. I have it in the other room. It's the Sermon on the Mount episode is great. There's like it's terrible though. It's so bad.
Yeah.
Bad fun or bad? I've got to slog through this.
It can change from moment to moment. The acting is Ed O'Neill does a decent job because Ed O'Neill's good in everything. Everybody else on the show, he like insisted on using real surfers. And like sometimes using amateurs pays off, like on Degrassi. Sometimes using amateurs really does not pay off, as on John from Cincinnati. And then it just got dumped like a hot potato after 10 episodes.
I believe we need to divide HBO pre-Sopranos and HBO post-Sopranos. Is that not the dividing line?
That's post Sopranos.
I know. That's the thing. It doesn't get the excuse of being it's
yeah,
post Deadwood.
I would say Oz probably just
Oz was pre-Sopranos, wasn't it?
Oz was like a year before The Sopranos, and it kind of that was the first hour-long drama, like prestige format show they did.
Yeah, I'm talking like First and 10 HBO.
Oh yeah, that's like way before.
Oh man, was that show awful? I didn't even like it back then. I didn't even like it back then. Tales from the Crypt I liked. Always look forward to that.
Tales from the Crypt was great.
The comedy. They played heavy metal on heavy rotation.
Heavy metal.
Whew. That movie to me, I was like, oh man, when I was a kid, I was like, I should not be watching this. You know, I have a very delicate when you start a relationship and you're bringing somebody into you know their normal sane humans, and so you've got to pick your poisons carefully. Like I had a tough sell on Fright Night. Fright Night's one of my favorite horror movies of all time, and like I had to actually sell on that. Forget about Shock Treatment. Shock Treatment is maybe, you know, the next relationship I'm in, maybe she'll watch Shock Treatment when we're in the retirement home. It'll take that long. Yeah. I'm saying I would defend, like, what are you, if you're showing me heavy metal, what are you showing me? This is nudie, dirty cartoons. Like, what's next? Next date night is Dirty Puppet Show.
Meet the Feebles.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you said that. I saw that movie in a theater.
Oh wow, I'm jealous.
I saw that movie in a theater. It felt I was like 19 and I was like, I shouldn't be watching this. I shouldn't be sodomy. You might think it oughta me. That was, I saw it because I was on a college campus, and they had, you know, this theater would show like stuff you would not find in a Cineplex, and I saw a bunch of like really weird things, and people need to know that the director of the Lord of the Rings, people bring up like, oh, you didn't know he made these gory horror movies. No, you didn't know he made the dirtiest puppet show ever made. He took the Muppets and twisted it into dark, dark places. I felt wrong after watching that.
Oh yeah,
that movie. That was one of those movies that made me feel wrong.
Yeah.
Worse than a Rob Zombie movie. Like the Rob Zombie movies are horror movies that I watch and I'm like, I don't enjoy this. This is unpleasant. I wish I hadn't watched that. Feebles, I was like, I wish I hadn't watched that. Although now I'm talking about it with glee. Like it's a point of pride. Like
you were there.
I was there, and other people have. Next episode, Meet the Feebles.
I've never seen it, so that might actually be.
I don't know if you need. Does he need to see it?
Meet the Feebles? Yeah.
All right.
I love Dead Alive. That's a great movie.
Yeah.
With the shit with the lawnmower thing at the end.
The lawnmower thing is the one that gets all the credit. The thing that doesn't get the credit is that he is rebirthed from his huge zombie mother. He evacuates the body as though he is rebirthed. Peter Jackson, Lord of the Rings man, did that on film. He committed that to cinema.
I have to say, the Lord of the Rings things in terms of Peter Jackson stuff that I've seen, that's probably my least favorite. Like, I would take the King Kong remake over any of the Lord of the Rings movies. Hot take.
I don't think that's that much of a hot take. I don't have, again, like Lord of the Rings wasn't, I was old, at that point. It didn't have, and this may sound like sacrilege, but Ron, you're a D&D player and all of that. I give a lot of credit for somebody who created a genre. Like when you go back and there are these things that were the first, and they were trailblazers, and they created a genre and everything. I give all the credit in the world, but sometimes they are not the best examples of that genre. Are you following me on that?
Well, I've already jumped ahead to J.R.R. Tolkien, so I don't know what I'm a little confused.
J.R.R. Tolkien is my example of he
Okay.
essentially created that fantasy genre. That genre did not exist before him. Elves, dwarves, hobbits, the whole thing Dungeons and Dragons is based on was from before J.R.R. Tolkien. That kind of fantasy world did not exist. He was the first. I give him all the credit in the world for that. But I feel no shame whatsoever saying those books are not a good read.
Thank you. Oh my god! I'm so glad you said that because that's
not a good read.
I actually, D&D is great, but I've never really gotten into fantasy books, and I tried Lord of the Rings. I read the first 100 pages of Fellowship, put it aside, came back a few years, read the first 100 pages of Fellowship, and said, I'm never trying to read this again, because all I made it is walk.
I made it halfway through the Two Towers, and I'm like, I am not enjoying myself. I love me some D&D. I'm not enjoying this book, and I'm not going to keep reading. And people are, oh, no. And I'm like, no, some of these people who say that just watch the movies. They never actually read the damn books. And I defend Peter Jackson for eliminating the Tom Bombadil. Now, I love me some Tom Bombadil because that is weird shit that should be in a movie. There should just be a Tom Bombadil movie. But I get it that Peter Jackson was like, no, I got to cut this out. It has nothing to do with the plot. And you're off hanging out with this Mary, I'm Tom Bombadilio. And he's not connected to the plot in any way whatsoever. They stop off and there's this whole long section where they're hanging out with Tom Bombadilio.
Am I the only person when I saw Fellowship of the Ring in the theater, like, that Randy Newman song "Short People" was just going through my head?
Oh no. You're right. Don't want no short around here.
I was so bored. I went to see it. I've seen all three in the theaters, but I was so bored. But I was like, wow, people were complaining about, oh yeah, this was Tom Bombadil wasn't in there, and this isn't quite like, and what is it? Arwen is.
Yeah, I don't know why those movies get so much credit for being book accurate, because he did probably the best you could do.
I got dragged to the Hobbit movie too. Sorry.
Oh my god, that it was divided. I did read The Hobbit and I enjoyed it. I read the whole thing, but it's an easier read. It's like, oh my god, you made 3 movies out of this and added, I don't know what. But I was like, people are complaining about it not, leaving stuff left out. And I was like, I don't know. This seems exactly the same. All they do is walk and talk the entire time. They stop over in Rivendell and then they continue walking, where they do a lot of talking.
Oh no, we need to go meet the magical creatures at the woods. No, the other part of the woods.
I saw the first Hobbit movie in a theater, and then I ate at a Denny's. I'm not trying to knock Denny's, but and then afterwards ate a meal at a Denny's. Maybe it wasn't a Denny's. Forget that. Don't say I'm trashing Denny's or anything.
And it's as good as it sounds. See you at Denny's.
But a commercial eatery. And then the illness I felt afterwards was a combination of the movie. And I'm like, this is supposed to be like a good night in our culture. Like
because at Denny's, when the Hobbit movie came out, they changed the whole menu to be like the Hobbit menu.
And I didn't go for that reason. It was just close to the mall. And I was like, I thought this was supposed to be like what we do. Like, isn't that supposed to be a great night where you go to a big movie and you eat a greasy meal. Isn't that supposed to be great? But I could not deny the physical and mental illness I felt afterwards. And I felt cheap and dirty. And I am
So the food
glad
was so bad it impacted you psychologically.
it's impacted me psychologically. And now look at me. I'm in a garage talking to two people about shock treatment, not eating fast food. I feel so much better. Look where I've come. Now, this is how to spend a weekend, suckers. No
Yeah.
more Hobbit movies for me. I'm going to talk about Shock Treatment, a movie that no one will watch.
And that's why, we talk about it so that they don't have to watch, so that we talk about the movie so that you don't have to watch it. However, need to make this clear. That doesn't mean you shouldn't watch it. It just means you don't have to, but you should. So,
I think there's at least like 3 or 4 movies we've covered where I would just outright say don't watch them, but that's out of like 80.
I'm glad I talked to you because I almost watched Maidstone.
Maidstone, yeah, I don't know what
I almost
was
watched that
thinking when I was
Yeah,
in
this
college, but that movie was so bad.
You need to be careful with the power you wield because the conversation about Mailer was very intriguing.
yes.
And based on that scene, I watched the YouTube clip of the scene of Rip Torn getting lost in character or something. I don't know what was going on there. You don't know.
It's the only part of the film you really need to see.
Yeah, I'm glad you said, "Oh no, you don't have
Yeah,
to."
I was with Rip Torn on that one. I was rooting for him. I'm like,
Right?
yeah, punch him, hit him.
Right?
It was like Titanic, where it's just like they giving you reasons to want like Leonardo DiCaprio's character to just like die a slow, painful, icy death for 3 hours, and then they give it to you.
Oh.
You know what the big tragedy of Titanic is? Rose survives.
Harsh, hot take. And I don't know. I mean,
You ever
maybe,
see that Harmony Korine interview where he's on Letterman and he's clearly high out of his mind, and Letterman said, "What is the film you're here to promote?" And he's just like, "It's Titanic too, but like this time it's on a rowboat, man."
am I overly sensitive where when Jack says, "Hey, I got to be careful here because Alex, my co-host on the Saratoga Horror Show,
Oh, that's
she
right. I've got to cut this out, don't I?
she really loves no, warts and all, man, warts and all. So she really loves Titanic, but she will not listen. I don't think she will listen to a whole this long of a podcast about shock treatment. Like, it was almost a fight to get her to watch Halloween 3, and she didn't like that. But we have this policy: if whoever picks the movie, we all got to watch it. So, so when Jack is like, "Hey, enough of this stuck up stuff. Let me take you to a real party." And you go below decks and it's the music and everything. And I understand why most people would look at that and be like, "Oh yeah, of course. That's cool. He's, taking her to the below decks and showing her, how life is much more fun." But to me, I was like, "Oh, let me take you to a real party. Poverty. Look at the poor people. The poor people have so much fun. It's better like this." I'm like, "Fuck you, man. That's not how it is." I get the sentiment and I appreciate it, but it's also like, oh yeah, the poor are happy. See, they're having the real fun. And maybe I think I was overly sensitive on that point. It wasn't. I know what they were intending to do. I know what they were intending to do, but I was also like, I was also like, I don't like a merry depiction of that. Yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah, the poor people aren't so stuck up, but they'd probably be okay if they had some money too. Like, give them some money.
Right.
They might have a great party too if they had access to the ballroom.
Well, they ran out of money because they spent all the money on the boat.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm not here to knock Titanic, but
I mean, to paraphrase a certain someone who shall not be named, I like ships that don't sink.
Oh, right. Oh, gee, it's so funny you said that. I was going to infuriate. I should stop doing this because it's not very friendly. I was gonna say that. I was gonna say that very thing to Alex about the Titanic. It was like, Titanic's cool and everything. I like ships that don't sink. And that would probably be and she would be right. She'd be like, "No, done. You're canceled." You'd be right to do so.
2 guys in a rowboat. How did we get to the Arctic? Or no, Ashton Kutcher in a remake called "Dude, Where's My Boat?"
Or Dude, where's bad
I've
taste.
seen that movie twice. The original.
The car is a metaphor for the soul.
Yeah. So speaking of shock treatment,
Speaking of shock treatment, yeah. I mean, listen, I could go on for a long time about shock treatment, but I think I may have
We'll have to have you
exhausted.
back on to talk about
Shock treatment revisited 1 year from today. Shock treatment revisited. All the
we
stuff
can check in on your progress.
you want to know. Yeah.
well, I'll tell you,
Yeah.
there's if there's one lesson I got from this discussion, it's that the next time that I come to Saratoga, Dan,
Mhm.
I'm holding you to this, we're going to karaoke.
Okay, yeah.
I'm
well,
down.
The alley's not there anymore.
I'm
Yeah, I
always
know.
down for
You mentioned
karaoke.
early on that you love to do karaoke, right?
Okay.
I am a black belt in karaoke.
All right.
All
I have
right.
a list. I have a list.
Ron and Pete karaoke is happening.
Yeah.
It's on.
And you know, it was a good movie about boats.
What's that?
The I'm on a boat music video. I felt like it was a lot more concise and to the point than Titanic was, and also like it was clearly a better boat because they don't like nobody drowns.
Best boat movie of all time.
Oh man.
Master and Commander, Far Side of the World. It was fantastic.
Overboard, the remake.
Oh, nailed it.
Wait, which one did you say, Ron?
Overboard. So the original one had Goldie Hawn, but the one that came out a few years ago has Anna Faris, and I love Anna Faris. I'm not saying it's a good movie. I just like Anna Faris.
I do too. I really like Anna Faris too, and I don't know why. She did get her own movie. She got the
Smiley face.
House Bunny.
She got the House Bunny, which I've seen more than once because of Anna Faris, and yeah, she has Smiley Face. Smiley Face I've seen a couple of times because
Smiley Face.
Smiley Face or Smiley.
Yeah, it was called Smiley Face. I'm pretty sure.
Smiley Face. Yeah, she gets really, really stoned, or she's constantly baked, and she has to pay the rent and get a job, and it just her going around and being just completely lost and in this haze, and but it's fun, and it is, I think, a really good depiction because we get some of her inner world of like, wow, somebody who is that stoned. Yeah, that seems about right.
Yeah. Quick question. Shock treatment. If it was remade, Anna Faris is Janet. Oh no, this is the real question I want to ask.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
What would shock treatment have looked like if they were able to get Tim Burton? Not Tim Burton. I'm sorry, Tim Curry.
Oh, Tim Curry.
Would the fate of the film been different?
I think
Would
if
it be
they'd
better
able to
known?
get Tim Curry, they probably could have gotten the money to actually just make the Rocky Horror sequel. Like,
Yeah,
I feel
well,
like
that's
the restrictions in this film came down to them not having the people to get the money behind
you're
them.
you're absolutely right. If they could have gotten Tim Curry, shock treatment wouldn't have existed.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. That settles that.
Uh,
That settles that.
I guess should we do the sign off or?
We should do the sign off because I'll keep going.
Oh yeah, no, I mean we'll have to have you back because originally we were going to talk about Trees Lounge. I would still like to cover that movie at some point, but I'm glad we chose this one instead.
I would totally. Hey, can we talk for 5 minutes about Trees Lounge after we sign off?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so this has been a nominee questionable movies. I'm still Dan,
And I'm still Ron.
And I'm Pete. Gentlemen, a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having
and
me
where
on.
where can everybody find you on the internet?
Oh, just go on YouTube, look up Saratoga Horror Show, and you will be delighted with the horror movie hijinks the Triumvirate of Terror partakes in.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, and yeah, we definitely have now a date for karaoke. So
It's on.
Somebody's getting a date around here. All right, we'll see you at the movies.
all right. Well, take care, everyone.